I never imagined the betrayal that awaited me. The disco lights blurred my vision as I watched my wife, Lisa, wrapped in the arms of another man. The laughter, the intimate touches, the lies unraveled before my eyes. I hired detectives, uncovered secrets that shattered our 15-year marriage. Her deceitful smile, his smug look, they thought they could get away with it. But they were wrong. My plan for revenge was cruel, precise, unstoppable. They will pay for every lie, every kiss. This is my story. Watch as justice unfolds. Aaron Anderson parked his dark blue 2009 Mustang GT in the special lot for visiting professors and walked into the ballroom. As usual, he was late. He had been at the docks again, playing darts and chatting with the locals in a small bar. His wife, Stacy, who wanted to become a full professor at Papalis University, had called to tell him he was late. She sounded really angry, just like before, because he had missed the start of the dinner event. "We'll cover for you as always," she said, and her voice showed she was upset. We meant her and Bob. Bob was Dr. Robert Thompson, and he had been Aaron's best friend since they were kids. The two men were always together and a big part of each other's lives, except for 5 years when Bob was in grad school and Aaron was in the Navy. They both loved archaeology, which they shared as a passion, but they approached it very differently. Bob was a scholar who focused on research, charts, and documents. He would spend months in the library learning everything he could about a topic before trying to find it. Aaron, on the other hand, loved to be out in the field. He was a diver and a climber, ready to go anywhere if he thought there was something interesting to discover. Even though they were as close as brothers, they had very different styles. Robert liked books and computers, while Aaron enjoyed being around people. Where Robert's often arrogant and superior attitude pushed people away, Aaron could walk into a room full of strangers and leave with a few new friends. People were drawn to him, and he was drawn to them. This was a great skill because locals often shared stories that you wouldn't find in books or on the internet. Many times, Robert and Aaron would travel to a small town looking for something special or a piece of history and hit a dead end. Robert would get frustrated and want to quit, but then a barmaid or a mechanic would tell Aaron the real local story and where it actually happened. Later, Robert would write a paper about it and get it published. This made them a very successful team. Although Robert was more famous, he knew that a lot of his success came from Aaron's discoveries. Populous University had put out a challenge for archaeology explorers. Each time the ground shifted in this area, ancient Greek artifacts were found. The university staff realized that museums around the world were willing to pay a lot for genuine Greek or Roman items. Because the university got some money from the Greek government, it wasn't too hard to get the needed approvals and papers to sell or lease the old artifact. Robert wanted a full-time teaching job at the university, and Aaron just wanted to explore and get paid for it. They had arrived about a week earlier to understand the place better. The gala tonight was where all the treasure hunters invited by the museum would learn what was happening. Robert spent the week nervously going over Greek history. He wanted to be ready for any questions that might come up. He had asked Aaron to study with him, but Aaron laughed and refused. "Why would I think I know more about Greek artifacts or history than the Greeks do?" he said. Instead, Aaron spent the week meeting people at the university and in the town. He liked to hang out around the shipyards and the marina. Stacy, on the other hand, enjoyed sunbathing and shopping. Aaron hurried to the banquet hall trying to tie his tie as he walked. A lovely young woman stopped him at the door and smiled. "May I?" she asked, pointing at his tie. Aaron smiled back and nodded. The woman quickly tied his tie into a nice knot that he would not have been able to do. At 6'4" and 220 pounds, Aaron wasn't known for being delicate, but people seemed to like him. As she stepped back to admire her work, the woman assessed the whole picture. She gave him a thumbs up and said, "Go get him, cowboy." Aaron was momentarily speechless. There was something special about her. Besides her beauty, she had a confidence that seemed beyond her years. "I'm older than you think, cowboy," she said, as if she could read his mind. "Why do you call me cowboy?" he asked, smiling. "Because that's what I feel from you," she said with a laugh. "You're honest and strong like the old cowboys. Your car has a horse on the front. When I look at you, my feelings say cowboy." She looked at him again. "I like you, Aaron, a lot. good things will happen for you here on my islands, but there will be a bit of sadness, too. Don't look so surprised, cowboy. You know a bit about magic yourself." Aaron nodded, believing that something good was guiding him. Besides, she smiled as she started to walk away. "Your boots give it away, don't they?" Aaron looked down. When he put on his suit, he had forgotten to wear dress shoes. His black cowboy boots were just so much more comfortable, and he figured no one would notice. He walked into the banquet room. Many people were there, and he had already met a lot of them in the past week. He talked to them and gave compliments as he looked around. He bumped into the dean of the university. He had played golf with the dean just the day before and had lost badly. "Hey, Marty," Aaron said to Dean Reinhardt. Aaron thought it was funny that a German was the dean of a Greek school, but the world was getting smaller every day. "Hey, Aaron," the dean replied. "I'd say you're a bit late, but it doesn't matter. You haven't missed anything. I'm still sore from that big loss you gave me on the golf course yesterday," Aaron joked. The dean laughed and then introduced Aaron to his wife. Aaron found this interesting. The dean's wife had dark hair and was quite young compared to the dean, who was over 50. She was also the one who had fixed Aaron's tie earlier. "Your wife and partner are around here somewhere," said the dean. "She's pretty, but he's a real pain. But he's a smart pain, Dean," Aaron replied. He excused himself to find Stacy and Bob. He searched the hall for Stacy's blonde hair and slim figure, or Bob's thin build and bald head. He found neither. Going out on one of the balconies for fresh air, he then saw both of them, though he wished he hadn't. "Wow, looks like he enjoys that a lot more than I do," said Aaron. "But like they say, to each his own. From now on, you're both his problem. Please, Stacy, try not to get too carried away. I wouldn't want anyone from the university to see what's going on." Stacy jumped up and moved away from Bob, who was trying to zip up his pants quickly and accidentally caught himself in the zipper. "It's not what it looks like, honey," she said awkwardly as Bob yelled in pain. "Wait," Aaron said, raising his hand. "I'm not as quick as you two, so I take a bit longer to figure things out. To me, it looked like you were doing something you shouldn't. So please tell me what really happened." Stacy looked stunned. For someone so educated who could talk about many topics, it was unusual for her to say nothing. Bob was trying not to move. He was bent over trying to free the hair caught in his zipper. Each move he made only caused him more pain. Aaron stepped closer and punched Bob in the face hard, knocking him out. "Think of that as a way to make it easier for you," Aaron said. "Now, when you go to the hospital, they can fix you up without any pain." Aaron turned to his silent wife. "Don't come back to the villa for at least an hour, please," he told her. "That way I can grab my things and be out of here before you get here." "Aaron, we need to talk," Stacy said, sounding upset. "It's not my fault. He's been flirting with me for months. We should discuss this now. Waiting won't help." "Uh-huh," Aaron replied. "Stacy, you speak 3 or 4 languages, right? I'm sure you know how to say no in at least one. We don't need to talk. You and Robert have a lot in common. You're both smart and educated. You two have more in common than we ever did. With all that brain power, you would think one of you would have told me. I would have wished you both well, and it wouldn't have to be like this. You two are really smart, and I'm just a tired ex-Navy guy who likes to dive and search for things. Maybe if you had done this the right way, we could have stayed friends." Aaron quickly took Stacy's arm and removed her wedding rings. She tried to hug him, but he pushed her away. "No, please, Aaron, don't do this. It was a mistake," Stacy cried. "I love you. Let me explain." Aaron turned to leave and noticed that many guests were watching. He smiled at them as he moved through the crowd and left the banquet hall. He drove his Mustang through the narrow streets back to the villa they had rented. He quickly packed all his clothes and personal items into the car. Then he moved his diving gear to the garage so he could get it later without going into the house. He drove around for a while. His phone rang over and over. Stacy called several times that evening. He didn't answer her calls or Robert's. He did talk to a few new friends who wanted to cheer him up after the embarrassing scene at the banquet. However, Robert played a low trick. He asked his mom to call Aaron. After Aaron's mom had passed away, he became very close to Robert's mom. It made sense since they were like brothers. "Hi, Ella," Aaron said when he answered the phone. "Can I call you back in a few days? I'm not up for a chat right now. I just wanted to say I'm sorry you and Bobby are fighting, but you two need to talk it over and figure it out. That's what you always do," said Ella. "Ella, I don't think that's possible this time," said Aaron. I think it's over and I can't see a way to fix this. Okay, Ella said seriously. Aaron, you're like my own son, so let me explain. It's just a car. Ella, what do you mean? Asked Aaron. I thought if you were this upset with Bobby, he must have scratched your Mustang. Please don't tell me he broke it, Ella said. Aaron, I saw Bob with Stacy in public at a university banquet we went to. He replied there was a quiet pause on the line. Then Aaron spoke again. Ella, I'll call you in a few days. Just moments later, Aaron got another call. He didn't know the number, but he thought it was okay to answer. How are you feeling? A woman's deep voice asked. Just great. Aaron answered, feeling anything but. My husband was right about your friend. He's a real jerk, but you're strong. You'll get through this, she said. Thanks, Aaron replied. The night had really worn him out. He found himself near the docks because he had spent the whole past week there getting to know the area. He started looking for a motel or hotel. He spotted one that didn't look too bad. The best thing about it was the big vacancy sign that kept blinking on and off. The place was a pirate-themed lodge. A big sign out front showed a ship with a big, fierce-looking dog hanging from it. The sign was meant to say Hanging Dog Hotel in bright neon orange. But over time, the letters I, N, and G stopped lighting up. So the sign now looked like Hang Dog Hotel. The building was shaped like a big U with a pool and lounging area in the middle. It seemed odd to have a pool so close to the ocean. Why swim in a pool when you could jump into the sea? Only very old or very young people would want that. Aaron shook his head and walked to the front desk. A middle-aged Greek woman took his credit card and swiped it. He signed the register and she handed him a key. His room was on the second floor and his balcony overlooked the pool. Even in the dark, he could tell the pool wasn't in use. Then a young bellboy, maybe 15 years old, came running up to Aaron's room. Aaron wondered why he bothered since he had already carried his own bags. The boy made the bed and then walked up to Aaron, holding out his hand. The boy was thin and wore his uniform poorly. It was wrinkled and too big, and his pants sagged low, revealing the top of his underwear. His hair needed a cut and his face was dirty. But the boy stood in front of Aaron with his legs together, back straight, holding out his hand like a fancy butler. The sight was so funny that Aaron gave him a $5 bill just for being brave enough to ask for it. The boy's effort was the only thing that made Aaron smile that night. Aaron fell back onto the bed, fully dressed, resting on top of the comforter. He turned off the lights and tried to understand what had just happened in his life. He felt shocked. This was strange for him. He was the kind of man who could sense a storm coming before anyone else even knew. He also had a knack for selling stock before it dropped in value. But this, he didn't see it coming at all. To be fair, he hadn't been looking for trouble. After all, who was he meant to trust the most? The two people he thought would always support him were the woman who promised to be true to him forever and the man he grew up with, like a brother. The last thing he expected was for either of them to let him down. So when he found out it was both, he felt completely defeated. He might have thought that Stacy could get bored and leave him someday. But he always believed if that ever happened, his friend Bob would help him through it. Or if things went wrong between him and Bob, at least he would have Stacy to lift his spirits. Losing both at once was crushing. Aaron had a lot on his mind. After all, it was Bob's idea to come here. Stacy had been excited about it too, but maybe they were already together back then. Aaron wasn't sure. They seemed to have different goals. Both wanted the same job at the university. Maybe Bob thought he would get the job and have Stacy as his assistant. And Aaron figured that Stacy might think she would get the job while he and Bob would just do field work. But none of that mattered to him now. Forget them both. Maybe he should just go back home. He'd look into shipping his car home tomorrow. With that thought, Aaron fell asleep. Dr. Maria Claridge woke up and looked around her dorm room. Her roommate had already left, so she was alone. Then she heard the noise that woke her up again. It was her cell phone. Who could be calling her at this hour? Miss Claridge? A voice said on the phone. Or maybe I should say Dr. Claridge? Yes, said Maria, speaking clearly with her crisp British accent. She adjusted her glasses as she spoke. I'm sorry to be direct, the voice continued. I've heard that you were let go from your teaching assistant job and might be looking for another one. Would you be interested in a position that could lead to something better? Who is this? Ask Maria. I'm sorry, I thought you would know my voice. This is Elena Reinhardt. Maria sat up quickly. Elena Reinhardt was the dean's wife. This was serious. Yes, ma'am, she said. Great. Can we talk about this over lunch? Said Elena. She told Maria the time and place and then hung up the phone. Maria smiled. For the first time in days, she felt happy. Maybe she wouldn't have to return to England after all. Stacey Anderson stepped out of the shower and looked in the mirror. She didn't like her reflection. There were new lines on her face that hadn't been there the day before. She thought it was just nerves. Well, nervousness mixed with guilt. She was a smart woman and never thought she would end up in this situation. Aaron was always late for anything important. How could she have known he would show up late for the gala last night? Being on time was not like him. He didn't come back to the villa last night at all. Where was he? She thought he needed time alone and would drive around in his car for a while. She figured he'd come back and sleep in one of the other bedrooms for a bit. She knew it would take time, but she hoped he would forgive her. He probably wouldn't trust her for a long time, but she had seen couples get through worse. Her own parents had been one example. Her father had cheated on her mother for years. Later, her mother had an affair too. Still, they stayed together until her father died of cancer. Stacey just needed to talk to Aaron. She hadn't actually done anything wrong. She had only been flirting with Bob for a week to persuade him to let her have the teaching job, or at least to include her in their team so she could be considered for it. Bob had hired a new research assistant, a young English girl who wore big glasses and loose clothes. The favor she wanted from Bob was his decision to let her take the assistant spot instead. To be honest, her flirting had suggested that she might reward him in other ways. If she was on the team, Stacey could apply for the job. If things went as she hoped, she would become the professor, and Bob and Aaron could keep being explorers or treasure hunters like they always wanted. Even though both she and Bob had doctorates, Stacey had more teaching experience. Bob had more hands-on experience, but all he ever did was research and look through records. Aaron was the one who did most of the actual work. He loved diving, digging, and climbing. The three of them would make a great team. They just needed to make sure each person did their part instead of only two of them. Stacey was only trying to join the team, not break it apart. In her mind, they would work perfectly together. Bob would research and find out what they were looking for. Aaron would go out and get it, while Stacey would teach and give lectures about it later. It could have been just right. It really could have been, but now everything was a mess. The team was broken apart, and Stacey's marriage to a good man who had always treated her well was in trouble. She loved him, and now that was at risk. On top of that, she had ruined a close friendship between two men. Aaron had disappeared, and she couldn't believe he had not shown up. It shocked her even more that Robert thought there was something going on between them. Robert seemed to think that her grateful gesture after he fired someone was the start of a relationship. Nothing was further from the truth. Robert couldn't compare to her husband. He wasn't as good-looking, and she did not feel attracted to him at all. They didn't really share anything in common except for an interest in ideas. It was silly for him to even think that. After he had gone to the hospital where doctors had helped him with an unfortunate accident, he kept saying we in their talks. What are we going to do? He had asked. How are we going to handle this? Did he not know there wasn't a we? He had always seen her like a student. Until now, he had not treated her with respect. The funny thing was, the one man who did respect her, who valued her mind and her heart, wanted nothing to do with her. Things got even worse when she had to leave the party feeling ashamed. The embarrassment from her walk of shame was hard to bear. People who had seen them would not think highly of her now. The worst was the look from the dean's wife. That beautiful dark-haired woman looked at Stacey as if she could see all her flaws. Elena Reinhardt had looked at Stacey with a hint of pity. Stacey asked her if she knew where Aaron had gone, not just to fill the silence, but to show that she wanted to make things right with him. Stacey knew women from Greek families were often very close to home, but most women were. Elena met her gaze and smiled, saying, "Don't worry about him, he'll be just fine, I'll take care of it." Thinking back on that moment made chills run down Stacey's spine. She needed to find Aaron. It shouldn't be too hard. His car should stand out on this small island. How many Mustangs could there be? Stacey dried off and began to dress. She chose a floral blouse and cargo shorts, planning to wear her favorite shoes. They had high heels that really showed off her legs. Stacy was tall and slim. She looked great in a swimsuit. Her legs were long and slim, and her waist was flat. Her light blonde hair and blue eyes were probably her best features. Aaron could never say no to her when she pouted and looked at him with those bright blue eyes. Just as she started to put on her shoes, someone knocked on the door. Stacy hopped over with one shoe on and the other in her hand to answer it, thinking it might be Aaron. On the other side of the door stood Robert, hunched over. "Hello, sweetheart," he said. His voice was dry and showed no feelings. "I would have come earlier, but I had to wait for my painkillers to work. I didn't want to call because I didn't know if your husband was back. I can see he isn't since his other wife isn't parked in the driveway." "What do you want, Bob?" Stacy asked. "Oh, don't be upset, Angel. I know this isn't how you wanted things to go. Truth is, it wasn't what I wanted either. I really want to avoid hurting Aaron. He is my best friend and partner, but I guess the feelings between us were just too strong. Anyway, I'm sure we can fix this in time for our project. This is business, and we are all professionals." "That's why I came." "You came here to suggest that we make amends?" Stacy asked. "No, I came because we have a meeting at the university. We need to talk about how much support they'll give us and what they expect from us." Robert said, "If Aaron isn't back, the two of us will have to go alone. He usually finds these meetings boring anyway. My face is swollen and my jaw hurts every time I talk. This meeting is going to be awkward." Stacy knew she had to go to the meeting. She wanted to be seen as more than just Aaron's wife. Joining in and sharing her thoughts would help others see her as a real partner. So instead of finding her husband, Stacy followed Robert to his car. Maria was filled with excitement. She couldn't believe this was happening to her. She expected Elena to offer her a job as a teaching assistant, or maybe as a helper on one of the trips. To be honest, she would have liked the helper job better since she had almost no field experience. Research assistant felt too far away for her, but being the lead researcher was more than a dream. It was like a fantasy. Yet she would have to convince her future partner of the idea. From what Elena had told her about him in the past day, she wasn't sure how he would react, but time was running out. Maria believed she could handle it. She had 4 brothers and had helped a couple of them through some tough breakups. They also had something in common. Maria's old partner was the one who hired her as a research helper just days after she lost her teaching job. But before she even started, he fired her. So neither Maria nor Dr. Thompson was happy with the situation. Maria had been working with Professor Dilworth for a semester and a half before he let her go. It was really his fault. He decided to take everyone out to dinner to celebrate a local holiday, but the restaurant had a dress code that didn't allow her to wear her loose clothes. She chose a nice dress that was still pretty baggy, so it didn't show her shape. Since Maria started developing curves, she got a lot of unwanted attention. Some men thought her body meant she was looking for attention. Her larger chest caught too many eyes, making her uncomfortable. She wore baggy clothes to make people think she was just a bit overweight instead. Maria also owned contact lenses, but often wore big glasses that didn't look nice. She usually tied her long, curly hair back in a tight bun that made her appear older than she was. When the professor and the men saw her, they only cared about her chest. The next day, the professor started finding ways to get too close to her. When he finally touched her without warning, Maria reacted quickly and kneed him hard. He ended up walking funny for a week. The next day, he apologized and promised it wouldn't happen again. Maria believed him at first, but 2 weeks later he called everyone together and laid them off. Maria thought it was just her, but she learned he laid off all his staff, both men and women. This made her feel better, thinking it was just a cost-cutting move. A few weeks after being let go, Maria found out she was the only one who hadn't been called back to work. The others were all rehired less than a week after being laid off. Then came the chance to help Dr. Thompson with research. But Maria discovered he gave the job to another woman he was reportedly seeing. He seemed the type to act that way. Maria quietly entered the meeting room, where she recorded everything and took notes. Elena had told her that her new partner might be a bit upset for a few days. They had 4 days to research and prepare their proposal for the museum's funding. The dean would choose the best 4 teams from at least 12 teams there. Some of them were known for going all around the world to discover new things. Thompson and Anderson had a good name in their job. Maria was curious about how this would all work out. It was possible that she might join their team after all. That was one of the ideas Elena had given her. Maybe Thompson and Anderson would put aside their issues and team up. If that happened, she would likely be Anderson's helper, while the other woman, whoever she was, would help Thompson. As she looked around, she saw Thompson with a woman beside him, but she didn't see Anderson at all. Not that she knew who he was. Elena had only told her he was big and good-looking. Maria politely nodded at Thompson and, after taking some notes, left right after the meeting ended. She needed to find her new partner and start on their project as soon as possible. Elena had mentioned that he and his wife were renting a villa not far from the campus. Maria decided to go there first. She got a ride with a friend and arrived about an hour after the meeting. She walked up to the door and knocked. After waiting for a moment, she knocked again. The villa looked nice, but its current residents hadn't kept it that way. Some parts needed a little care, but that was normal. Maria dreamed of having her own home one day. She wanted a successful career along with a home and family. Her career was going well, but she still hadn't met a man who truly caught her eye. She had plenty of first dates, but very few second and almost no third dates. It wasn't that she was inexperienced. It just seemed that she attracted the odd ones. They started off as friends, mostly because they didn't see her as attractive when she wore her work clothes. But as soon as she showed interest, their attitude changed. They would go from, "Hey friend, want to play a game?" to, "Hey, can I get closer?" All in one conversation. Even the older men like Professor Dilworth weren't any different. Finally, a woman answered the door. She seemed to recognize Maria, which was odd since Maria didn't remember meeting her. Then it clicked in her mind. She was the woman who had been with Dr. Thompson at the meeting. "Can I help you?" the woman asked. She was probably close to 40, and while she was still pretty, seemed a bit out of sorts. She was tall and slim without the curves that Maria had. Maria would have loved to be shaped like that. "If you're looking for Robert, he doesn't live here and you won't find him," the woman said. "I had nothing to do with him letting you go." Maria couldn't look Stacy in the eyes. "I was looking for Mr. Anderson," said Maria with a smile. "Is he here?" "No, he isn't." "Why are you looking for my husband?" Stacy asked. Maria decided right away that she didn't like her. "Business," Maria replied, turning to leave. "What kind of business?" Stacy's voice grew more upset with each second. Nanya said Maria. "What does that mean? Speak English?" Stacy snapped. "It means my reasons are not your concern," Maria said. "Have a nice day." She walked away and got into her friend's car, and they drove off quickly. Maria felt embarrassed. Elena had told her that Mr. Anderson and his wife were having some trouble. Why had she gone to his house? Now she had to find him elsewhere, but where could he be? Maria called Elena to ask where she might find Mr. Anderson. Elena thought for a moment and said, "This island is small. There aren't many places to hide. He's probably hiding. You should check hotels and look for his car. He drives a loud sports car, the American one with a horse on the front. I'll look into it too and call you back." Maria thought Elena Reinhardt was a strange woman. Although Elena didn't seem much older, she often acted like someone much older. Maria nervously played with the necklace Elena had given her when they first met. It was even stranger that Elena made Maria promise never to take it off while she was there. "It will protect you," Elena had said. Maria thought it sounded like old beliefs and magic. How old-fashioned could a university dean's wife be? Still, Maria liked Elena, and she kept her word, so she wore the necklace. Plus, it was pretty. 4 hours later, Elena called back. "It took a while, but I found him. People here really like that man. He's heard about what happened at the gala." Elena explained everything and urged Maria to keep it private. "He's staying at the Hangdog Hotel near the harbor," said Elena. "You need to find him fast if you want to join the team. I hear Thompson will have the team ready in a few days. If you're not signed on by then, you can still go with them, but only as a crew member. You won't get any credit, and I want you to have that." Maria borrowed her friend's car and drove to the harbor. Once there, she asked for directions to the Hangdog. At first, she was surprised by how many people asked about her accent. Then she realized that no one called it the Hanging Dog. Everyone just said Hangdog. She couldn't figure out why, but it didn't really matter. Maria arrived at the hotel, which was smaller and a bit shady, just like she thought. It was around 8 p.m. and starting to get dark. The sun set and the moon rising over the sea looked beautiful. If Maria had time, she would have loved to take off her shoes and walk along the beach, but unlike her dreams, she would be going alone. Still, a nice walk by the ocean was something to enjoy, whether she was with someone or by herself. It would be a nice memory for her to keep. Maria sat at the bar and ignored some local men who thought they could win her over quickly. "Oh my God, your accent is so lovely, beautiful lady," said one man who seemed quite bold. "Look, can you just leave me alone?" Maria replied with a smile. "If you don't go away, I might scream help, really loud." She kept her voice low just for him while still smiling. "Sorry," he said loud enough for others to hear. "I didn't know you were into women." After that, Maria was mostly left alone. A few women came over to sit near her, but none tried to talk with her. Maria started to think that Elena had sent her on a wild goose chase. What would a famous explorer be doing in a place like this? All around her were those local men and a few women trying to make money from the few tourists who came this way. Most people were just here to drink and relax. There were a few musicians playing different types of music like gypsy tunes and traditional Greek songs. Most of the time they got a little applause, but were mostly ignored. Just when Maria thought about leaving, something caught her attention. She had drunk more beer than usual and had decided to head back to the dorm to use the bathroom. A tall man came down the back stairs, over 6 feet tall. He was smiling, but his eyes showed a sadness that Maria had never seen before. He looked kind of beautiful in a rugged way, with dirty blonde hair and deep blue eyes like the ocean. He walked into the bar area unsteadily like he had been drinking. People welcomed him with cheers. Strangely, even though the locals seemed to love him, he didn't look like one of them. He appeared American, not Greek. He sat at the bar and someone gave him a friendly pat on the back and handed him a drink. It wasn't a fancy tourist drink, but looked more like some homemade Greek brew in a jar. He looked at the drink, took a quick sniff, and tilted his head back. His eyes got really big, and for some reason this made Maria smile. "Wow," he said loudly. "That'll put hair on your chest." The crowd laughed and cheered, and Maria couldn't help but giggle at him, too. She wanted to like him as much as everyone else seemed to. "Sing one, Andy," yelled someone from the back. Now Maria knew his name. Andy. Someone gave him an old guitar that looked worn out. He adjusted a few knobs and strummed it lightly. Then he tapped the back of the guitar and strummed again. "I think I've got the right song for this place in this crowd," he said. The crowd cheered again. Maria was hooked. Even though she had to go to the bathroom badly, she couldn't leave. Deep down she hoped he couldn't sing well. She hoped he'd be as bad as the other musicians so she could escape and go back to Elena for more tips tomorrow. The hanging dog had been fun, but not where she wanted to stay. Of course she could ask for the guest list or knock on a few doors tomorrow after she took care of her bladder and got some sleep to shake off the drink she'd had. Aaron Anderson had better be worth all this trouble. Then he started to sing. He had a deep voice that was surprisingly good in a different way. He didn't sound like a rock star or a jazz singer. It was more like a mix of folk and country. "I go in for singing. I do it for my pay." He sang. The crowd seemed to love what he was singing. Maria hadn't heard the song before and didn't know if he was good or not. She missed the next line or two as she watched him closely. With a few good friends and neighbors in to play the nighttime tunes, he sang. So passed the jar and that old guitar in this hangdog hotel room. The crowd screamed so loudly after that line that Maria couldn't hear him anymore. She wondered if he had made that up or if it was part of the song. There was something about him that made her feel comfortable and drawn in. She didn't want to leave, but she knew she had to. It wasn't just the song. It was him. Even though he was older, she found him truly attractive, which surprised her. But she didn't have time for anything like that. Her future depended on the days ahead. So she left for 2 reasons. 1, she really needed to pee, and 2, she wouldn't find Aaron Anderson by just sitting and listening to some singer, no matter how charming she thought he was. Stacy Anderson sat at her desk, looking out over the sea. The villa was on a hill not by the sea, but she could see the water from most rooms in the back. Watching the sea helped her feel calm, even though she didn't like it. Aaron loved the ocean, and she hoped he was looking at it too. She thought about what had gone wrong. Robert was acting very differently towards her now. He seemed to believe there was something special going on between them, and he was so full of himself. Why hadn't she noticed this before? Ever since they left the meeting, he had a smug smile on his face. He kept trying to find Aaron and told her to keep calling him. It was almost laughable. He really thought they could find Aaron and he would forgive them both so that business could go back to normal. But it wouldn't be the same because he wanted her to be unfaithful to Aaron. He had said, "What he doesn't know won't hurt him." He acted like she was someone who would cheat on her husband. It seemed like he wanted to share her, Aaron's wife in public and Robert's secret in private. The worst part was how he treated her. After that awful girl left, he came over. His small apartment couldn't hold all his work, so Aaron let him use their library on the first floor. He was looking up local legends and made a list of things he wanted to find and where they might be. He needed to talk to the locals to learn more. When she asked him when he planned to do that, he replied that Aaron usually did it. Aaron was good with people. She asked him about getting a team together, and he said that Aaron did that too. The funny thing was that for years, Stacy thought Robert was the clever one. She really believed he was just helping Aaron. But now she was starting to see that Aaron did a lot more work than she'd realized. Maybe she thought Robert was smart because they both focused on facts and research. But that afternoon she saw that unlike Aaron, Robert never listened to her ideas. He treated her more like a servant than a partner. When he got bored, he came over and touched her in a way that felt wrong. At first she was shocked and wanted to tell him to stop. But then she thought that if Aaron never returned as much as she disliked Robert, he might still be useful to her. The memory of his touch made her cringe. He didn't touch her gently, he simply grabbed at her. It took her some time to understand the difference. When Aaron touched her, he meant to make her feel good. He wanted to share something special with her, and he liked it when she enjoyed it too. But Robert was different. He didn't care if she felt good or not. He only wanted to feel good himself. He wanted to have fun with her when he felt better, no matter how she felt. This wasn't how two people in love should be. It wasn't a real connection. It was just a way for him to satisfy himself. Stacy felt foolish. She knew that others could see her shame. People looked at her with a smile that felt like a joke and with scorn beneath it. What hurt her the most was that she never planned to end her marriage. She just wanted to fit in with the guys and be seen as one of them. Her husband had always treated her well, but it was like she wasn't fully included. He listened to her thoughts and ideas, but he kept her at a distance. He and Robert were the close friends. She was just a colleague. Moving to Greece for her job offered a new start for everyone. Instead of a true partnership, she wanted to be part of their group. The quick favor she did for Robert was meant to say thank you for letting her join in, hoping to get his support in the future. But things had fallen apart. Now she didn't know where her husband was, and Robert treated her like she was his to control. To make matters worse, the woman Robert had fired was looking for Aaron. Business, she said. What kind of business could she have with him? As Stacy thought about it, the doorbell rang again. She rushed to the door, then remembered that Aaron would not ring the bell since he had a key. When she opened the door, Robert walked in right away. As she let him inside, he grabbed her unexpectedly. She jumped back in shock and glared at him. "What's wrong, baby? Aaron isn't here, is he?" he asked. "No," she replied. "I was just surprised." "I think I know what we need to do next," he said. "Did you talk to Aaron yet?" "He still hasn't come home," said Stacy. "I don't know where he is or where he slept last night. I'm about to sleep alone for the second night since we got married." "You don't have to sleep alone," Robert said with a smirk. "What if he comes back while you're here?" Stacy asked. "Last time he saw you, he knocked you out with one punch. This time you might not be so lucky." "Yeah, you're right," said Robert. "Well, make some calls. Do whatever you can to find him." "But what do I do when I find him?" Stacy asked. "I can't force him to come home. I can't make him talk to me or come back. I can't make him forgive you or talk to you, let alone work with you. What do you want me to do? He's your husband. You need to figure something out," Robert said. Stacy watched Robert leave the house. He had done it again. He told her he knew where they should start looking for something, but he didn't tell her where it was or what they were searching for. It felt like her thoughts didn't matter at all, and he had touched her in a way that made her feel uncomfortable. Instead of improving, her life was getting worse quickly. The next morning, Maria called Elena as soon as she could. She had been awake since just after 6 and waited 3 hours to let Elena have time to wake up and eat breakfast. Mrs. Reinhardt, are you sure I can find him at that hotel? Maria asked. It seems a bit run down. It doesn't look like a place a professor would go. That's because he's not a professor and he doesn't act like one, Elena replied. Just go there and ask someone about him. I bet everyone there knows him by now. Maria got dressed and went back to the Hanging Dog. She sat at the empty bar and asked the woman behind it if they served breakfast. Of course we do, the woman said. I'll have scrambled eggs and toast with some bacon or sausages, Maria said. And black coffee, please. We don't have any of that for breakfast, the woman said in a bored voice. What do you have? Maria asked. We have beer, the woman replied. What else? Maria asked again. Beer, the woman said. We have other drinks, but we only serve them afternoon. This is a classy place. Do you know Aaron Anderson? Maria asked, feeling frustrated. Everyone knows AA. The bartender smiled. This smile felt a bit too wide for Maria. She thought the bartender might know too much about the man she was looking for. Can you tell me where I can find him? Maria asked, using her best British accent. He's upstairs in his room. Number 207, the bartender said. But he likely won't wake up for a while because he got really drunk last night. Maria went up the stairs to the second floor. She walked down the hall looking at the room numbers. When she reached 207, the door was slightly open, so she walked in. The room was nothing special, but when she looked at the person on the bed, she was shocked. Aaron Anderson was the singer she had liked so much the night before. He was lying there, half covered and still in the clothes from the day before. His shirt was unbuttoned, showing a strong and slightly hairy chest. Maria couldn't help but wonder what the rest of him looked like. His face was covered with a few days' worth of beard, but it looked good on him. It made him seem like he didn't care much about his looks. Sure, he could clean up if he needed to, but mostly he just focused on what he needed to do. He would probably get up, brush his teeth, shower, and head out. Maria liked this about him. She was very tired of guys who spent too much time on their looks. Without thinking, Maria reached out to move a messy lock of hair from his face, but before her hand got close, his eyes flew open and he grabbed her hand. "Why are you in my room?" he asked calmly. The door was open. She stammered. "But that doesn't mean you can just walk in, right?" he replied. She shook her head. "I've been looking for you for a couple of days," she said, as if that explained everything. "Mrs. Reinhardt thought I could help you as your research assistant. I was supposed to work with your partner, but he fired me before I even started. He chose Dr. Anderson, your wife, as his assistant. Anyway, Mrs. Reinhardt thought you might want help too. We need to get moving because we only have 3 days left to submit our bids. The university will only support 5 teams. There were 14 teams at the meeting you missed. Some have already sent in their bids, so we don't have much time. We need to meet with the rest of the team and decide what to put in our proposal and how much we should ask for equipment and things." Maria watched as he sat up in bed. He was still fully dressed and even had his boots on. He must have come into the room late at night after drinking and just collapsed onto the bed. He could have easily fallen onto the floor, and for some reason that thought bothered her. During the night, he probably felt cold and wrapped himself in the blankets. He shook his head at her. "Which part are you shaking your head at?" she asked. "All of it," he replied quietly. "We don't have to do any of that. I quit. I'm going home. May I sit?" Maria asked, pointing to the edge of the bed. "Well, since you're very polite for a burglar, please do," he smiled. "Okay," she said, gently sitting on the edge of his bed. "Mrs. Reinhardt told me to find you and join your team." There must be a reason she said that. She seems to know everything happening on this whole island. Aaron's eyes brightened at her choice of words. She spoke in a clear, sharp British accent that he found very attractive. The word freaking that she said so clearly really stood out. It actually made him feel a bit better. "There must be a reason why she didn't just send me to your partner," she went on. "She thinks he's a jerk," said Anderson. "I can't believe I defended that guy the other night. That was before I found out she was right. I've only met him once, but I totally agree with Elena. He's so full of himself." "I think she called him an unbearable jerk," said Maria. "Well, she's only seen him for a few days," said Aaron. "I've known him my whole life. He was my best friend and my business partner." "Was?" Maria said, raising her eyebrow in surprise. "It's not often you hear of a long friendship falling apart in just a few days." Even though he tried not to, Aaron found himself liking the short, curious woman. Woman? She seemed more like a girl to him, probably just 24 or 25. Her glasses were the ugliest he had ever seen. She was shorter than his usual type. Still, there was something about her that made him want to talk. It wasn't just a few days, he began. It was just a few minutes. He shared everything that had happened 3 days ago when he caught Stacy and Robert together. He opened up about how much he loved Stacy and how painful it was to lose her and his best friend at the same time. Losing his Mustang would have been the only thing worse. "That's terrible," said Maria. "What did she say when you talked to her? How did she explain what she did? Did she say it was just a one-time thing? Was she drunk? Did he force her? Does she love him? What did she say?" "I haven't talked to her since I caught them," he said. "Well, what did he say?" she asked. "He couldn't even talk when I left them," Anderson said with a smirk. Maria noticed a dangerous glint in his eyes. "So you just snuck away into the bushes after that guy took your toys away, huh?" Maria said. "From what I've seen in just a few minutes, that doesn't seem like you at all. Are you really going to quit your job and go home feeling sorry for yourself?" "What do you think I should do?" he asked. "Not that I'm going to do it, but just out of curiosity. This isn't a TV show, this is my life. I've been married to Stacy for 9 years. Catching her like that hurt a lot. I'm not exactly in a great place right now." "Well, you have 2 choices," Maria said. "You can go back, talk to them, and figure out what you want to do. You have 2 choices there, too. 1, you can take her back and forgive one or both of them, or you can just let it all go and move on with your life. Just go ahead and do what you really want to do. I guess deep down I love Stacy, and I hope things can get better for us," Aaron said. "Thanks, Maria," she said. "I'm going to the villa now to talk to Stacy. She needs to explain a lot if we are going to stay together," Aaron said. An hour later, Aaron was dressed and clean. He and Maria got into his Mustang and drove to the villa. Maria was surprised to see how people reacted to the car as they drove through the early afternoon. When they reached the villa, Aaron got out. Maria told him she would wait in the car to give him some space. Aaron walked up to the front door, but as he passed the living room windows, he stopped. There on the sofa was Stacy. She was lying down, looking at the ceiling while Robert Thompson was with her. Aaron felt anger rise in him as he watched Robert lean in close to Stacy. He kissed her on the cheek, and it seemed like she smiled back. "Robert, I'm almost there," Stacy said in a dull voice. This was strange for Aaron because she usually got really loud and wild with him. She would cling to him when it happened. Her movements didn't look frantic like they usually did. Maybe this was what she wanted. Seeing her with his best friend felt confusing but clear. It seemed calmer and more respectable than the times he had with Stacy. Maybe she liked that. Stacy and Robert seemed like a better fit than he and Stacy ever were. It wasn't just their school degrees. They had much more in common. He wondered if she had ever truly loved him. "Sorry," a soft voice said beside him. Aaron turned and saw Maria standing next to him. He looked away too late for her not to see the tears on his face. "Okay, Maria." "What do you do?" Aaron asked, looking at her seriously. He wiped his face and started to walk back to his car. She hurried to keep up with him. "What do you mean?" "What do I do?" she asked, shocked by his sudden change. "I don't do what we just saw, if that's what you mean." "Well, I do. Do it. I mean, I don't do it with someone else's." "Oh, no." "Maria, what I want to know is what is your job?" He asked. Her confused look made him try again. "Work-wise," he said, "in your career, what do you want to do?" "Oh," she said, "I want to be a history professor." "Great." He smirked. "We just left 2 of those back at the villa. Are you sure you don't want to go back and make history with them?" "Absolutely not," she replied. "I'd like to make history with you." Then she realized what she had just said when she saw one of his eyebrows raise as he looked at her. "Okay, you're my new researcher. Make a list of what you need. I'll check how much it will cost to rent a boat for us. You can start your research whenever you want." He replied. "Shouldn't we wait for them to finish and talk with?" Before she could finish, he turned to her faster than she expected. "Maria, from now on, it's just us. I won't work with my old partner anymore." He said, "I won't deal with my ex-wife either. I wish them both the best, but this is about us moving on." If you want to work with them, I can write you a nice letter to recommend you, but that's all I can do." "No, I'm good with you," she said, realizing she had slipped up again. "It's just that I've never really done research for a project before. I've never been on a field trip like this. I've taught many classes, but that's it." "Don't worry about it," said Aaron. "Most of the time, Robert just pointed us to the right area. He only helped us to focus on a certain place. Sometimes he didn't even do that well. Of course, he did give us some ideas about what we might find, but this time, it's not about what we find, is it?" "What do you mean?" asked Maria. "We aren't looking for a specific object," he explained. "And let's be honest, we're in Greece, so we'll probably find Greek and maybe Roman items. We already know that. We also know that the university will pay the team that discovers something. That team will also get a contract for more exploration. That's what I'm interested in. If you want to be a professor and we succeed, I'll do my best to help you get it. But this isn't the same as a usual field project. This is a race. Many different teams are racing through the old ruins of ancient Greece. To the winner go the rewards, and we're going to win." As he spoke, his smile brightened his face. Maria wanted to believe him, but she was sure that Dr. Thompson and Dr. Anderson would be doing much better research than she could, and they had at least a 3-day head start. "All right, partner, get to work," he said. "Look for any details you can find and get a few friends who can help us. They'll be paid, plus they'll gain experience for their resumes." He handed her a card with his cell phone number on it. "Call me if you need anything. If not, I'll see you back at the Hangdog this evening." He drove off, leaving her in front of the hotel where she first met him. Maria nodded and walked back to her friend's car. She was sure that Dana, the girl who owned the car, would want to help. She also knew some classmates who would love the chance to join in. She had to call Elena to keep her updated about what was happening. Aaron drove down to the docks. He spent some time talking to people he had met and hung out with during the week. In a couple of hours, he found a team and a boat that would work well for him. He asked the boat owner to write down an estimate for the costs to rent the boat for a week. This time, Aaron wanted to go without luxury. He didn't want to hire a big, comfortable research ship with fancy rooms and personal extras. That was how Robert always liked to travel. Aaron's boat would be made for speed and exploration. The boat would have a few computers and equipment to see underwater and check what was beneath the surface. Aaron wanted to search any area thoroughly. He would spend on good equipment, but other than that, he needed the fastest boat possible. He didn't want any heavy couches or fancy woodwork, no big movie screens or televisions, no bathtubs, fridges, or ovens. The rest of the afternoon was filled with phone calls. He called his lawyer back in the States and dealt with several things at once. Stacy had called him several times, but he hadn't answered her. He really meant what he told Maria about wishing his soon-to-be ex-wife well, but he had nothing to say to her or Robert. Stacy turned on the shower and stepped inside. Her life had fallen apart over the past few days. She hadn't heard from her husband since the night of the gala. Her plan to become a partner in her husband's career had gone wrong. She had to follow whatever Robert wanted because he was her only friend in this situation and also her only chance to fix any of this mess. She couldn't believe she had been intimate with him. It had been terrible. Actually, it had been worse than terrible. It was nothing. Robert had just gone through the motions while she felt nothing at all. Part of the problem was that Robert was not as big as Aaron. Aaron had spent 9 years learning what she liked, so he knew how to make her enjoy it. Robert, on the other hand, didn't seem to care if she got anything from it. Afterwards, she just lay on the bed feeling like the failure her husband had called her. Was trying to improve her career worth this shame? Anyway, they were just a day away from the deadline to submit their bids and proposals. Robert didn't know what to look for in a boat because that was Aaron's specialty. They also couldn't get any recommendations about their crew. They ended up hiring a captain who brought his own team with him. Robert managed to get a few university students to help with diving, but they didn't have much experience. Robert could dive, but he wasn't very good at it. He knew he had to do his best this time to make sure they were not taken advantage of or cheated. Both Robert and Stacy were hoping that Aaron would show up. Robert had worked hard to learn about the area and thought he knew some things that others didn't. The whole situation made it clear how much they had been depending on each other. They were stuck with inexperienced divers, a captain they didn't trust, and a crew that didn't respect them. Stacy especially didn't like how the men looked at her. She felt that Robert wouldn't be much help if things got bad, so she decided to stay on land. As another evening came, she sat on the balcony watching the sea. This time, tears came to her eyes. Things were not going as she had hoped. She wanted to be part of a well-known and respected school and do important work in her field of ancient history. Now she felt like she was nothing more than the partner of her husband's friend. If she was lucky, she might get a job as one of Robert's assistants. If she wasn't lucky, she might go home alone, sad, with no money and no job. When she first arrived, she was very sure about her marriage. In her push for a better career, she had risked her marriage, and now she was not even sure it would last. Robert said they would tell Aaron that they hadn't seen or talked to each other since the gala. They would say that they both started drinking long before he arrived and ended up really drunk. They both felt sorry for what happened and weren't thinking clearly at the time. They would ask for Aaron's forgiveness and try to move past it. It did make sense, and Aaron might understand since he had been drunk before and done some silly things too. But even when Aaron was really drunk, he had never cheated on her, even with young college girls around. Once he had been so drunk that he forgot to tie off a boat they rented, and it floated away, causing a lot of damage. But that was the worst of it. Even though her husband was big and strong, he was a laid-back guy who didn't hold grudges. Stacy believed that once he got over being upset, he would come back to her. Robert agreed with that idea. Stacy also realized that she was counting on Robert or Aaron to stay around. She and Aaron had talked several times about settling down there. Populous was the only university in the area, but for some reason the dean and his wife didn't like her at all. She really didn't think the dean would hire her by herself, no matter how qualified she was. She wasn't sure how the dean felt about Robert, but she knew he liked Aaron. They had played golf together several times during their first week. 2 days later, Stacy and Robert met in the big room where the gala had happened. There were many other people waiting to hear which teams had been picked. You could feel the nervous energy in the air. Waiting for the meeting to start was tough. No one knew yet which bids had been chosen, but there were whispers that the selection process had changed at the last moment. Stacy and Robert sat in the middle of the rows of chairs set up for everyone. They were separated by several students who would work with them. Both of them were hoping for Aaron to arrive soon. They both felt like something bad was going to happen with this project. Stacy thought things in her life had been going wrong ever since she had her first close moment with Robert. For Robert, it was worse. He felt scared. This was probably the biggest challenge of his job so far, and he had no confidence in anything except his research. There were many tiny details that Aaron usually managed, but now Robert had to do them on his own. He tried to find a new captain and crew, but realized he couldn't get anyone else on such short notice. If Aaron had been there, things would have gone smoothly. People seemed to like Aaron, and even those who didn't respect his size and strength. After the captain and crew found out that Robert was trying to replace them, trust between them fell even more. "Come on, Aaron," Robert thought. "You could have your friend back. She's not worth it." Suddenly, the room fell quiet. Robert looked up to see the deans step onto the stage at the front. As he began to speak, the room went completely silent. "We do this challenge every few years when there's a need," the dean said. "This year, besides the money, we want to add more staff. It was hard to choose just 5 options since we received so many good proposals. The problem is that they were all quite similar. It seems that the internet and computers are bringing us closer every day. Many of your search areas overlap and are very close to each other. I've never seen such similar results since I became dean." Everyone looked around at each other, feeling even more nervous. Robert was surprised. He had thought his research was special. Just then, Stacy leaned over the 2 students between them and tapped him on the hand. He looked at her, and she pointed to the wall on the left side of the room. He felt happy right away when he saw where she was pointing. The dean's lovely wife was leaning against the wall. More importantly, Aaron Anderson stood next to her with a serious look on his face. Robert had seen that look on Aaron's face many times when they were in tough spots, and they always managed to get through it. Robert wanted to jump up and cheer because he was so glad, but he kept it in. He knew he had to act like a professional. Both he and Stacy watched Aaron, wondering what they needed to do to make everything work out. Robert looked again and made eye contact with Aaron. Aaron gave him a small nod and turned back to listen to the dean. Robert nodded back and saw no anger in Aaron's face or his nod. Aaron was all about business. Stacy noticed the nod between her husband and Robert. She tried to catch Robert's eye, but he was focused on the dean. He did stop to talk to the dean's wife a few times, and she rubbed his shoulders a couple of times. Stacy felt uneasy about her touching Aaron. After the meeting, she might need to talk to Mrs. Reinhardt about that. "Remember the plan," Stacy whispered to Robert. He nodded. Stacy was sure that even though Aaron nodded at Robert, he was still upset with them. He was here to work, showing he could put feelings aside. He hadn't looked at her, which meant he was more open to working with Robert than to her. That made sense since Aaron had always told her that Robert was his best friend. But she was his heart. Following their plan, whoever Aaron was ready to forgive would help the other one as much as possible. So, because the proposals were so similar, the dean continued, we used different ways to choose. 2 of the teams were picked just based on their good names. Dr. Thompson's team from the United States and the team led by Dr. Ishikawa from Japan and his partner Dr. Helen Chambers from England. We also chose a team made entirely of students from our own university. The team from Germany led by Herr Stang was picked. Finally, the team from the Netherlands was also selected. The rest of the dean's words were drowned out by loud cheers and groans. Suddenly, a sharp whistle rang out. Everyone looked around to find the source. It was Eleanor Reinhardt. She smiled and pointed back to her husband on the stage. "As I was saying," the dean continued, "because all the proposals were alike, we dropped some because they were just too expensive and others because they simply made no sense. However, we decided to allow one more team in the challenge based on faith and reputation. The team led by Aaron Anderson, who used to work with Dr. Robert Thompson. Mr. Anderson's new researcher is Dr. Maria Claridge from England. She just graduated from our university. We chose her because of her strong reputation, just like Thompson Anderson's. Since they are no longer working together, it seemed fair to let both of them take part. Mr. Anderson's offer was also much cheaper than anyone else's. Plus, they are the only team looking into a different area of research. Thank you all for your involvement so far, and good luck to those of you still participating." Robert was stunned. He knew Aaron had been upset, but this was worse than he imagined. They had been friends since they were 6 years old. They were almost like brothers. Robert's mother treated Aaron like another son. They were family, for goodness sake. Why would Aaron damage that over a girl? Stacy felt just as shocked as Robert. Maria Claridge must be the girl who had come looking for Aaron the other day. Stacy was sure that the dean's nosy wife had set them up. It seemed clear that the woman wanted Aaron for herself. She paired Aaron with a smart but not very attractive researcher who was her friend. That way she could plan something with Aaron without anyone else getting in the way. She glanced at Robert to see how he felt. He was already moving towards Aaron and the dean's wife where they were still talking. The short, chubby woman was there too. Stacy noticed another man stopped Robert and handed him some papers. Robert suddenly got angry and yelled at the man who just nodded, smiled, and walked away. Stacy decided to let Robert handle the situation alone. It was likely something about the project. He hadn't asked her opinion on the research, which was also her area of expertise, so she figured he could deal with the details by himself. Stacy turned back to where Aaron had been standing. He, Mrs. Reinhardt, and the other woman were heading towards the exit with another young woman. This new girl was taller and looked better than Dr. Claridge. She could be trouble. Stacy watched as the girl reached out and put her hand on Aaron's lower back, asking him something. It looked innocent, but Stacy knew that when a woman liked a man, she often finds ways to touch him. This makes the guy get comfortable with her touch and want more. More importantly, it sends a signal to other women that she is claiming him for herself. Stacy was furious. She wanted to confront that girl for daring to touch Aaron. This was way too much. She needed to talk to her husband right away. Just then, Robert walked up behind her. He was very angry and about to say something when a young woman suddenly stepped in front of Stacy. The girl looked like a college student. She might have wanted to join their team or be Stacy's helper in exchange for a good word for her future job. "Dr. Stacy Anderson?" the girl asked in a bored tone while chewing gum. "Yes," replied Stacy in a bored way too. She took the papers the girl gave her and looked for a place to sign. She could always say yes to the girl as an assistant and let her go later if needed. "You've been served," the girl said as she walked away. Stacy was stunned. Her life had just taken a turn for the worse. She sank into a nearby chair. Robert stood over her, looking furious. "This is all your fault," he shouted. "My best friend is taking me to court to split our company and the money. He also brought you into my divorce. This will hurt my reputation with the people who give money for research. You've really messed my life up, Stacy. Thanks a lot." "Robert, just stop it," yelled Stacy. "I don't care about your money problems. My husband is leaving me." Stacy ran after the direction Aaron had gone. By the time she got outside, he was already gone. All she could hear was the Mustang's sound fading in the distance. Maria was busy packing everything she thought she might need for the boat. She felt uneasy and angry, but she didn't know why. It wasn't just about the project making her nervous. She was really mad at Dana. There was no good reason to be angry at her, but she was. Dana walked into the room with a happy bounce. She always seemed cheerful. Maria sometimes felt jealous of how Dana could stay joyful no matter what happened. "We're going to have so much fun," said Dana. "Some of us have to work," snapped Maria. "Our careers are at stake." "Well, if my job was in trouble, at least I'd have cute guys around to help," Dana said cheerfully. "That Professor Anderson is really good-looking." "I can't wait to be stuck in the middle of the ocean with him. Don't call him Professor." "He isn't a teacher," Maria shot back. "And I bet he won't have time for fun. This is serious work, and he's going through a divorce. Honestly, I don't think you're really his type." "I'm everyone's type," Dana replied confidently, "but at least I understand what has you upset now." She got closer to Maria and sat next to her. "Does he know?" Dana asked. "Know what?" Maria replied, getting up and walking across the room. "That you really like him?" Dana smiled. "I don't want to be involved with him at all," said Maria. "Well, you like him, right?" Dana pressed. "So what if I do? It doesn't matter. He sees me as just some kid who helps him with his work even though we haven't done any real work together. I could really help him if he would let me do more important stuff. I'm 27 years old, but he treats me like a child. You're only 24, and he thinks you're a grown-up. That's your own doing," Dana shot back. "Look at how you dress. How do you expect him to see you? Maria, he's always around pretty women. His ex is nearly 40, but still attractive. And Mrs. Reinhardt, that woman is really beautiful. So are you. But you need to be more open and stop hiding." "I dress this way," to Maria started. "I know," Dana cut in, "to keep away the wrong people and to make sure folks see you as a serious historian and teacher. I've heard your speech 100 times. Your plain clothes and glasses are like a shield. The problem is that your shield keeps everyone out, even the ones you want closer. You should let your guard down and see if he tries to keep the wrong people away from you." "But," said Maria. "Look, Maria, I'm your friend," Dana said. "I always will be, so I won't bother him. But I can't say that other women here will do the same. There are a lot of women at that hotel he stays at who might want him. If you don't show him you like him too, someone else will catch his eye and you'll regret it more than his silly wife does." Robert knocked on the villa's door. "Stacy, let me in," he said. "We need to talk." Stacy walked to the door and peeked out. When she saw Robert, she started to walk away. He knocked again, and she quickly opened the door. "What do you want?" she shouted. "You've already ruined my life. What else do you need?" "Stacy, I didn't ruin your life. We both messed it up, so we need to work together to fix it," Robert replied. "How?" Stacy asked. "Leave that to me," said Robert. "Just be ready to do exactly what I tell you as soon as I say it." A little later, Maria and Dana were at the Hangdog while Aaron sang. When he finished, the crowd cheered for him to sing Hangdog Hotel. Maria knew the song, but Dana hadn't heard it before and was impressed. They chatted through the first verse, but a woman nearby shushed them during the chorus. "I believe in magic, a little monkey shine," Aaron sang. "But the type of fun I can really have is by playing a great song." "He's really talented," said Dana. "He could sing your 5 kids to sleep." "No way," said Maria. "You're not planning to have kids with him, Dana." "We're not stopping at 5, Maria said with a grin. 2 tables away, Stacy frowned. "Don't tell me you're jealous of the chubby woman," Robert said. They both wore hats and kept their heads down, trying not to attract attention. "I'm jealous of anyone who wants to take what's mine," Stacy replied sharply. "No way that girl is getting close to Aaron and your plan better work." With some good friends and neighbors playing the bedtime songs, Aaron sang. Then he stopped, and everyone joined in singing. So pass the jar and that old guitar in this hangdog hotel room. Everyone chuckled and enjoyed themselves as Aaron walked over to Maria's table. Aaron, don't you trust me? Maria asked. Of course, he said, looking confused. Why do you think I don't trust you? Well, you haven't told me where we're going to jump in, she replied. It feels like you don't trust me. I don't know where we're going yet, he admitted. But we will soon. Didn't you hear the song? Especially the magic part? That's another thing, Maria said. When did you write that song? And why all this talk about magic? I'm getting tired of it from you and Elena Reinhardt. Aaron laughed, a deep, hearty laugh that filled the space around him and made others smile too. But for Stacy, who was close by, it felt like a stab to the heart. How could he be so happy when she felt so hurt? She thought about going over to him and asking him to come back, but Robert had already moved them away to avoid being seen. I didn't write that song, Aaron explained. It's a song by Gordon Lightfoot. I think the guy who first opened this hotel was a fan. The next owner kept the name but added a pirate theme. Did you hear that? Robert asked Stacy as soon as they stepped outside. Stacy took out her earplug just as Robert pulled his out. They used special earpieces like the ones sold online as super ears, originally made for older people with hearing problems. Now anyone could use them to listen in on faraway conversations. I heard everything, Stacy snapped. I've told you before, there's no way I'm letting that girl get with my husband or have his children. That's my role. Come on, Robert laughed. Stacy, you have a PhD. You're a good historian and smart as a whip. But you're not the mothering type. You're more like a spider that eats its own young. I think in a strange way you care about Aaron, but your job is your main focus. Just look at how quickly you were ready to help me. But that's not what I wanted to talk about. I meant that Aaron doesn't really know where he's diving. We need to keep an eye on him. Why do we have to follow him? Ask Stacy. Have you heard the saying, I'd rather be lucky than smart? Robert replied. Stacy nodded. Aaron has a talent for finding good places to dive. Robert explained, I do a lot of research and pick the area. But 8 times out of 10 he looks around and says, let's dive here. Most times we find interesting things just where he wants us to. Right now, I feel like all the teams, including ours, are looking in the wrong spot. I checked, and the area I found is the same place everyone else wants to dive. The truth is that area has been searched a lot. I want to try a different place. So we'll go with Aaron. It's a bit risky, but like I said, Aaron has this strange luck. I'd rather take a chance with him than against him. The next morning, Aaron, Maria, and Dana met at the docks. Maria introduced Aaron to Sandra, Jared, Jordan, Mike, and Steve. Sandra would keep track of everything for the project. Jared and Jordan would dive with Aaron. Mike would watch the divers and the site with the electronic gear, and Steve would take care of the computers and equipment. As they got on the boat, the hot Greek sun was shining down on them, even though it was still early. Sandra and Dana wore swimsuits with cargo shorts over them. The guys all wore t-shirts and swim trunks. Maria was already feeling the heat in her baggy sweatshirt and long skirt. Across the way, 3 sets of binoculars were aimed at Aaron's boat. Follow them when they leave, Captain, said Robert. Look at those legs, said the captain, then turned to Robert. You'd better hope they don't see us. Why? Asked Robert. He picked a good boat. The Seahorse is one of the fastest around here. It's smaller and lighter than ours, but has more than twice our power, said the captain. If he realizes we are watching, he could easily get away. There are many small islands around where he can hide, and he can go through water that's too shallow for our boat. Robert nodded and kept watching through the binoculars. Stacy stared at the Seahorse's deck and cursed quietly to herself. That little brat, she muttered. Oh my gosh, I fired her, said Robert. On the Seahorse, Sandra and Dana had taken off their shorts and were sunbathing on the deck, waiting to leave. Some of the crew on the boats and the archaeology team were looking at the women. Young women in pretty shapes were not something sailors saw very often. Even Aaron couldn't help but look. Maria noticed where Aaron's eyes were and quickly went below deck. She decided to show a different side of herself. When she came back up and told Aaron that the captain needed him, he almost lost his balance and fell into the water. Maria had let her long hair down for once and looked very different from usual. She had taken off her glasses and put in her contacts, showing her nice eyes. She wore a bit of lipstick and makeup, but the biggest change was her tiny bikini, just like the other women were wearing. Maria's body looked amazing. It was clear why she didn't wear reveal clothing often. People would not take her seriously. She noticed that Aaron couldn't take his eyes off her as she walked away. She made a note of that for later. "Coming," said Aaron, watching her move towards the bridge. The way she walked caught his attention. "Are you now?" Maria replied. Aaron nearly lost his footing again. Maria linked her arm with his as they made their way to the bridge. She felt a warm tingle from his touch and thought that dressing like this was worth it. On the other side, Stacy threw her binoculars down onto the deck, bending them and cracking a lens. "I'm going to get that girl," she said angrily. "Now we see why those big sweatshirts looked so funny," said Robert. "Do you think they are real?" Stacy just yelled in frustration. "Captain, you know what to do," Robert said before going below deck. Once he was out of sight, Robert took out a small phone and quietly spoke into it. Then he returned to the deck, pulled out a map, and told the captain to head to some new coordinates. Stacy went below deck and stayed there. She did not like how the crew or the captain were looking at her, especially since they had seen the women on Aaron's boat through the binoculars. She missed her husband very much and hoped Robert's plan would help them be together again. Suddenly, the boat moved quickly and everything shook around her. Stacy felt sure they were going fast. Leaving the cabin she shared with Robert, she looked for him on deck. She spotted him standing by the rail. Robert looked up and smiled when he saw Stacy. "Stacy, I have a friend who will contact you soon. He will mention me as our mutual friend. How well do you swim?" he asked. "Not very well," she replied, curious about what he meant. Robert pointed to one of the crew members. He whispered something to the man who quickly walked away. He returned a moment later with a worn-out life jacket that looked in bad shape. "Is this the best you have?" Robert asked. "Yeah, it is," said the man. "We don't really use those, we just keep a few for checks. Stacy, you should put this on, it's almost time. Our friend says they're coming, and their boat is much faster than ours." Robert explained. "And remember, we're partners. If you betray me, I'll tell him everything. If I lose, we all lose." "Robert, what are you talking about?" Stacy asked. "Your husband is on his way to get you," Robert smirked. "He just doesn't know it yet. But remember, we're in this together." "I heard you the first time, Robert." "I'm not stupid," said Stacy. "What do you mean Aaron is coming for me?" she asked, now curious. "Just wait, you'll see," Robert smiled. "You need to be surprised. It'll make everything feel real." The boat started to slow down near a deserted island. There were no trees or signs of life. It looked like just a big rock that had pushed up from the sea after one of the area's regular earthquakes. The boat dropped its anchor, moving only with the waves. After a few minutes, Robert's phone beeped. "I didn't know cell phones worked out here," Stacy said. "They don't," Robert replied. Then he called out to the captain. "Get the anchor up. We're leaving soon." Stacy heard the clank of a motor, meaning the anchor was being pulled back up. "All right, everyone get ready," Robert shouted. Stacy felt confused about what was happening. "We only get one chance at this," Robert yelled. "If anyone messes up, there won't be a bonus." Stacy was puzzled. The crew members just stood there doing nothing. Robert was also just watching the water. Suddenly, she saw a boat in the distance. She reached for her binoculars, but then remembered she had broken them before. So she grabbed Robert's binoculars from his hand. The boat coming closer was the one Aaron was on. "Can you see the boat?" Robert asked. "Just a little," Stacy replied. "That means they can see us, but the sun is in their eyes, so they won't figure out what's happening for a minute," Robert explained. He stood up and stretched like he was getting ready for tennis. Then he looked at the incoming boat. "I have to time this just right," he said. "I don't want you to get too wet." Stacy was about to ask him what he meant. Her outfit was nice, and it was already getting squashed by the old life jacket. She didn't want him to splash water on her for no reason. He should have told her they would be splashing water so she could have changed her clothes. "Action!" shouted Robert. Suddenly there was loud yelling from the crew. They were banging pots and pans, and it looked like a fight was happening on deck. The other boat was close enough that Stacy could see people on it without using binoculars. She thought she saw someone pointing at her ship. She leaned over the railing to see better but couldn't tell who it was. Then the boat she was on started moving quickly, but that was not her biggest worry. Robert bumped into her and she lost her balance, nearly falling off the part of the deck that had no safety rail. "Be careful, I almost fell!" she shouted. "Almost," Robert said and pushed her again. This time Stacy couldn't hold on. She fell over the side and into the water. The life jacket, though it looked bad, helped her float to the surface. Once she caught her breath, she started yelling. "Robert, you jerk!" she shouted as loud as she could. But it was too late. The boat was moving away from her quickly. The other boat was now coming toward her. She waved at it. It took the seahorse about 3 minutes to reach her. "Do you need help?" a young guy on the deck asked. "No, I'm just going to pull a boat from thin air and float to safety," Stacy replied sharply. "Of course I need help. Oh, I kind of wanted to see that," the guy said. Stacy glared at him. They threw her a harness and lifted her onto the ship. As soon as she got on board, Aaron walked away. Only the young man who first saw her and 2 girls were left. One of them smiled and seemed friendly enough. The other was Maria Claridge. Stacy was surprised at how pretty Maria had become. Although short, the woman had a stunning figure which made Stacy feel a bit jealous. She had often thought about getting breast implants, but Aaron disliked fake breasts. Maria's legs, though short, looked strong but not too muscular. She had a tiny waist and nice curves, too. What upset Stacy the most was that without her glasses, Maria looked very nice. It felt like Maria had tried to hide her beauty when they first met. Maria turned to the young man. "Mr. Anderson says to show her to the spare room below deck next to the cruise area. Move a chair and a cot in there and make her comfortable, but keep her out of the way," she instructed. "Why do I have to do it?" he asked. "You pulled her from the sea, so now she's your responsibility," Maria said, turning to leave. Maria then joined Aaron and the captain on the bridge. In just a little while, both Stacy and the young man who saved her arrived. Aaron felt a sting in his heart as he looked at Stacy. She still looked just as lovely to him as she did when they got married. The young man with her seemed eager to talk about something, but for Aaron, all he could see was his ex-wife and his new assistant. In just a few days, he had started to have feelings for Maria, but he had shared so many years with Stacy. Despite his love for her, he couldn't ignore the hurt she had caused. Sometimes moving on was the only choice. "Aaron, thank you for saving me," Stacy said. "We need to talk." As Stacy walked toward him, Maria stepped in front of them. "It wasn't me who saved you, Stacy," Aaron replied. "It was that guy over there. I wouldn't have jumped in to help. I'm sure if he hadn't pulled you out, someone else would have. There's an unspoken rule about helping people in the ocean, but in this case, I might not have followed it," he added. "If that's all, we have an important meeting." He glanced at the young man, expecting him to take Stacy away, but for some reason he wanted to stay. "Mr. Anderson, I need to speak to you about this," he said, pointing to Stacy. "She knows how to get below, so I'll wait until you two finish talking." Maria stepped forward. "Jared, when you're on a ship, the first lesson is to follow orders. Aaron told you to take Dr. Anderson below, so take her below." Jared nodded and agreed. "All right," Aaron started. Maria raised her hand. Then she walked to the door and yanked it open. Both Jared and Stacy were standing just outside. "Steve!" Maria shouted loud enough for everyone on the ship to hear. "Sorry," Jared said. "She wouldn't leave, and I'm confused about why I have to look after her. I came here to dive, not to babysit." "Come back inside," Maria said, looking at Aaron. He wondered what she was planning next. Steve ran up to the bridge. "Hey, Steve," Maria said. "Do you remember what we talked about before?" Steve nodded, looking at her. "Get your scanner and hurry back." Steve quickly left. "Now, Jared, tell us what's on your mind," Maria said. "Well, Dr. Claridge, you've heard it. I wanted to dive with Mr. Anderson. That's the main reason I joined the trip. I don't think it's fair that I'm being picked on just because I saw a woman in the water. But if you were below checking your diving gear like you were supposed to, how did you see her?" Maria asked. "I don't know," Jared replied. "I was just lucky to be up there." "Yes, very lucky for me," Stacy added. "I don't think it was luck at all," Maria said. "Jared, I don't know you. I've had classes with all the others. Why don't you tell me how you found out about our team?" Just as he started to reply, Steve came back with a small electronic device. "Isn't that a—" Aaron started to ask. "It's a frequency analyzer," Steve replied. "Don't car thieves use those to break into cars?" Aaron said, thinking about his Mustang. "Yes, Mr. Anderson, but that's not the main use for it," Steve explained. "Earlier, Steve was doing his job, Maria said, looking at Jared. He picked up strange signals. At first, we thought it might be some of the guys using their phones. You know, college students and their phones. But we're far enough out that there shouldn't be any signals. Then, Steve noticed that the signals seemed to come from this ship sometimes, and from somewhere else at other times. We couldn't figure out what was happening. Steve guessed that they might be radio signals, but the numbers were all wrong. We picked up those signals again right before that other boat dumped your ex-wife in the water. Immediately, Aaron understood. He grabbed Jared so fast that Jared didn't have time to react. Aaron searched through the boy's pockets until he found a small phone which was almost the size of a toy. "I've never seen a sat phone this small," Aaron said. He opened it and checked the call history. The last 6 calls were all to the same number. He pressed redial and waited for it to connect. "Robert, you've messed up," he said. "I'll be leaving your girlfriend and your spy on the dock for you. You should have waited a day to use them. Maria and I haven't told anyone where we're diving yet. Today was just a test run for the equipment. I'll be letting the university know about your tricks." Then he opened the back of the phone and took out the battery. "Mr. Anderson, it wasn't my fault," Jared complained. "Dr. Thompson said he would stop it," Aaron interrupted. "Go below deck and take her with you." He glanced at Stacy again and shook his head. "Aaron, I would have done anything to be close to you again," Stacy said. "We've been together too long to let something small break us apart. We need to talk. Stacy, every time I see you now, it's getting easier to live without you. If you want to talk, get a lawyer. Have him contact my lawyer and we can talk during the settlement meetings. Other than that, I don't want to speak with you. You've made your feelings about me and our marriage very clear, so I'm moving on with my life," Aaron replied. "That's not going to happen, Aaron," Stacy shot back. "I know I made a big mistake. I put my work before us and I shouldn't have. I regret it now, but I'm not giving up on us, and there's no way I'm letting Dr. Thompson. Those girls over there are taking my husband," Stacy shouted. "I didn't take him, you just let him go," Maria replied. It was funny to hear her insults in that British accent. Maybe if you had more to offer, he wouldn't be with me. You gave up a good man for someone who can't be trusted with his assistants. He has a bad name for messing around with them and then letting them go. So now you're upset because he dumped you and you want revenge by taking my husband," Stacy yelled. "No, he didn't even try to get with me. I'm sure he would have failed just like the last guy did. He got rid of me before he had the chance because he found another woman he liked better," Maria shot back. Then the door to the bridge burst open. "Captain, there's a storm coming!" a crewman shouted. "We need to find a safe place to dock. We can't outrun it!" The boat's engines roared, pushing them through the water faster than before. The captain and Aaron looked over the maps for a nearby island or a quiet cave where the storm wouldn't hit them so hard. Aaron spotted an island on the map that was very close. "I should have thought of that," the captain said. "But many fishermen avoid that island. They say strange things happen there." "Any port in a storm," Aaron joked. The waves grew higher with each moment. Aaron noticed Maria leaning against him, holding his hand. He smiled down at her, but Stacy, still standing nearby, glared at them without saying a word. "Maria, you've never been on a boat in a storm, have you?" Aaron asked. "Actually, I've never been on a boat at all," she admitted softly. "Don't worry, we'll be okay. I'll make sure you're safe," Aaron promised her. "Maybe you should save some of that for your wife," Stacy shot back. "The one you promised to stay true to. You're not talking about the same ex-wife who cheated on me with my former best friend, are you? Isn't that a bit funny?" he replied. "Aaron, please move on. I love you. It only happened once and it was just a mistake. It's not like we slept together. That would have been a real reason for divorce, but a drunken mistake? Come on. I've never said I was perfect, and I told you it was a mistake," Stacy explained. Suddenly, Maria burst into laughter. Aaron just shook his head. "Maria, this isn't a good time for you to be laughing," he said. "Why don't you check on the others? What was Booty Smurf laughing about?" Stacy asked. "She doesn't know anything about us or our marriage. Stop with the nonsense," Aaron replied sharply. "That's 3 mistakes, Stacy." Then he went below deck. A few minutes later, Stacy went after him. Aaron stopped suddenly outside the crew's quarters and bumped into Maria, who was looking inside. Soon, Stacy ran into him. "Are the others all right?" Aaron asked Maria. "Shh," she whispered and nodded towards the room. Sandra and Jordan are in the monitor room still working on the electronics like everything is fine. Jared is outside complaining about how this is not his fault to anyone who will listen. He wants to talk to you. Dana, Steve, and Mike are busy right now. Aaron peeked into the small room and gasped when he saw a young woman with one of the men while another was close by. "Well, let's leave them alone," said Aaron with a smile. "But isn't it strange for her to be with both of them?" Maria asked. Aaron realized then that even though Maria was in her 20s, she didn't know much about relationships. "We can talk about that later," Aaron said gently. "It better just be talk," shouted Stacy from behind. "Sorry, Stacy," Aaron replied. "Are we in your way? Did you want to go in there?" "Aaron, since our wedding day, no one else has been with me but you," Stacy said sharply. "4," Aaron stated, looking at her. "4? What?" Stacy asked, confused. "Can't we just go somewhere and talk? I'm sure we can sort this out." "Oh, no," Maria interrupted. "You can't just go off alone. How do I know you won't try to sneak him away?" "Shouldn't you put on some clothes?" Stacy asked. "It's getting colder and you're scaring away the fish." "I am a bit cold," Maria admitted, "but I'm also curious. You seem very focused on my body. You mention it all the time. Is there something you're not saying? Just so you know, I've only been with a man once. I have no interest in being with a woman, but if I did, she would have to be young and pretty, so you don't fit that." Maria walked towards the cabin she shared with the other girls. Aaron watched her closely. She turned and caught him staring. Stacy slapped him on the shoulder in frustration. The captain came down to tell them that they had reached the cove. It was a small, hidden area surrounded by trees that protected them from the wind on 3 sides. There was also a small pier big enough for them to tie the ship to. The tires attached to the side of the ship were there to help protect it from damage if the wind changed direction. "We should be safe here during the storm, but it won't be easy tonight," said the captain. The weather report said there was a small earthquake that changed the tides. "With the strong winds and rain, we have a tough night ahead." Aaron put on a raincoat and went out on the deck. He enjoyed watching the waves no matter how rough the water got. A few minutes later, Maria came out to join him. "I brought you some food," she laughed. She gave him a bottle of beer and a paper plate with 2 slices of pizza. He looked at her in surprise as she sat down next to him. "I noticed this is the beer you like when you're not feeling sad over your ex. Mike from the pizza place brought 4 big pizzas with him. He froze them and we heated a few up," she explained. Maria sat in a chair next to him. There were 2 chairs bolted to the deck side by side. 2 more similar chairs were on the other side of the boat. Fishermen liked them. The seats helped keep them safe in case they caught a big fish. "Thanks, Maria," Aaron said, "and not just for the pizza and beer. How did you get those equis? I thought it was hard to find." "That's where I got it," she smiled. "You've been looking out for me since everything changed," he said sadly. "If it weren't for you, I might still be trying to drink away my problems with Stacy, and if you hadn't been there when I saw her again." He paused to take a sip of his beer to call himself. "Well, I'm just glad you were there," he added. "I have something to tell you," she said. "I think I know what it is," he replied. "I plan to do my best to explore the ruins and find great treasures. When I do, I will ask the dean to give you the job as a professor." Watching from around the corner, Stacy bit her lip in frustration to keep quiet. If Aaron gave that job to Maria, which could easily happen since the dean liked Aaron, Stacy would be out of work. She might find a job as an assistant, but that would feel humiliating. This made her feel even more need to fix things with her husband. Where was Robert when she really needed him? She thought they were clever together, but Robert always seemed a step ahead of them. The worst part was that his spy had been caught. Now Robert had no way of knowing what was happening. Stacy felt like she was all alone. She had to win her husband back without Robert's help. "That's not what I was going to say," Maria told him. "Honestly, when Elena asked me to find you, I was hoping for the teaching job. I have the degree they need. Maybe I don't have as much experience as Dr. Thompson or Dr. Anderson, and I hope you're not upset with me saying this, but I wouldn't act the way Dr. Anderson does just to get ahead. Anyway, I've realized something over the past few days that matters more to me than the teaching job." "What is it?" Aaron asked. "Curious. I thought people like you really wanted those teaching jobs. You don't have one, and you're doing just fine. Maria replied, a teaching job is just work. I want a life and a career. I want to learn more about history and bring it to light. I want to find those hidden pieces of history, and I want to enjoy life while doing it. I want to feel as good as I do right now all the time. Seasick, Aaron joked with a laugh. Maria looked at him seriously. If that's part of it, then that's what I want, she said. But don't you think you're overqualified for that? Aaron asked. This isn't what most people with a PhD aim for. Don't be silly. She laughed. I don't care about the path. I just want the life. Now I'm confused. Aaron said, what's so special about this life you want? Aaron, it's who you share life with that matters. What I want is you. I would never let a job come before you, so if I'm out on boats or climbing mountains, even though I'm scared of heights, I just want to do it with you, Maria said. I bet she wants to do it with you, shouted Stacy as she stepped onto the deck, struggling to keep steady. Stacy, go below before you fall, Aaron yelled. You want me to leave so you can get close with that British woman, Stacy yelled back. Stacy, I just want you to be safe so I can take you to court and move on. But if you'd rather fall overboard in a storm, that's fine with me, Aaron said. After all, you're supposed to be the smart one. Aaron, what happened to us? Stacy asked as waves hit the boat, shaking it against the pier. Less than a month ago, we were happy. That was the problem, Stacy, he replied. I loved you so much that I would have done anything for you, anything except share you. When I saw you with Robert, it broke my heart. I may never get over it. So if you want a simple answer, it was you. Here's the simplified version of your text. Your desire to succeed at any cost led us to this point. Now we just have to work with what we have. The next morning, the sea was calm. The boat returned to its home dock. There, they restocked the supplies they had used, including more Dasek was beer and pizza. While they were there, Aaron shared stories about their adventures with the Dean and Elena. She wasn't surprised by Robert's actions. Fearing he would be expelled from the university, Jared confessed what he had done for Robert. Aaron also heard that Robert's boat had still not returned from the storm. Many believed the boat got trapped in the storm and sank. Aaron and Maria met with the captain before heading out again. All right, let's go back to where we were before the storm stopped us. Aaron said, I'm about to show you my special way of finding where we'll search. As Maria and the captain watched, Aaron opened a briefcase and took out something. Do you need to plug that in anywhere? Maria asked. It's not electronic, Rhea, Aaron replied. He set a small flat board on top of a map of the area. Then he put a small pointed object on the board. After that, he placed both hands on the pointer and closed his eyes. Wait, Rhea, I need your help with this, he said. He took her hands and put them on the pointer with his. Close your eyes, he instructed. Maria did what he said. She closed her eyes and smiled. She noticed he called her Rhea twice. If he wanted to give her a nickname that was okay with her, it felt special, like he was claiming her, and she liked it. She felt the pointer move. It felt odd. Maybe the tingling she felt was because she was touching Aaron. Whenever they were close, she felt that way. Then the pointer stopped. Aaron marked a dot on the map. This is where we dive, he told the captain. Maria's eyes flew open. What is this? She asked. What about research? What about planning or tide tables? Remember the second part of the song? Aaron asked. I believe in magic, a little monkey shine. Maria nodded. What magic? She asked. What is this thing? It's a Ouija board. Aaron smiled. How is this going to work? She asked, surprised. Maria, all the other teams are out there. They had a good start and did a lot of research, but they haven't found anything. People have been searching this area for a long time. Some say everything here is already found. So why not try something different? Here's the plan. You can take the computers below deck and do all the research you want. We'll split our time. Half of it will be spent on your spot and the other half on mine. Is that fair? In for a penny. In for a pound, she said. We're partners, and I believe in you no matter what. Whether we find a lot of treasures or nothing at all, we're in this together. But there has to be something to gain or lose. If you're right and we discover something, then you get to lead us from now on. What you say goes no questions, but if we search for the next 5 days and find nothing, I get to make 2 big choices that you can't question ever. Aaron looked at her with doubt. After things went wrong with Stacy, he had trouble trusting people like he used to. Maria stretched out her small hand in front of him. Deal? She asked. Deal, he said quietly as he shook her hand. It took just over 3 hours to get the boat ready to leave again. Aaron thought about waiting until the next day, but the eager young team members really wanted to go. He decided to give in to their excitement because it was better to start sooner. The storm had actually helped them. Some of the other teams that had left before them were either damaged, delayed, or lost, like Robert's boat. Aaron felt strange that he didn't feel worse about Robert. They had been friends since childhood. He thought he should feel something sad, but deep down, he felt Robert had brought this on himself. If Robert hadn't gotten mixed up with Stacy, they would still be friends, and he would be here right now. Even if Stacy had started it, Robert should have known how to hold back. So with no worries, a light mood, and a clear mind, the crew went back out on the water. What they didn't know was that there was one more person on the boat than they thought. As night fell on the sea and the small boat moved towards their first dive spot, Aaron relaxed in one of the fishing chairs. Most of the young people were at the back near the dive platform, listening to music and playing cards. "Beer and pizza," a voice said behind him. Aaron turned and saw Maria standing near him with 2 plates and a couple of bottles of beer. "Wouldn't you rather be back there with your friends?" Aaron asked. "Nope. I'm exactly where I want to be," Maria smiled. "Besides, aren't we supposed to talk? Anyway, I think Sandra and Jordan are going to watch a movie they found online on the screens, and Dana, Mike, and Steve might be planning a rematch of what we saw yesterday. I never knew what a flirt she is." Aaron laughed. "She's not that kind of girl, Rhea." "Oh, are you trying to defend her?" Maria shot back. Aaron said quietly, "She doesn't need defending. What she's doing isn't against the law and no one is getting hurt." "Oh, so maybe I should just go join them then," Maria said sharply, since she's not that kind of girl and no one is getting hurt. "You shouldn't go," Aaron replied, grabbing Maria by the wrist and pulling her back down. "Why not?" Maria asked. "You act like I'm not different from Dana. I'm actually 3 years older than she is. She's only 24. If she's not that kind of girl, then I wouldn't be either, and no one would be hurt. Rhea, that kind of girl is someone who trades favors for money or something they want." Aaron explained. "Dana isn't asking for money, and as far as I know, she doesn't even have a steady boyfriend. No one is getting hurt. She's just helping the guys relax. So by that logic, your ex-wife would fit the bill, right?" Maria replied. "I still don't see why it's a bad idea for me to go down there." "Okay, then go," Aaron said firmly. "No one is stopping you." Maria stood up slowly and looked at Aaron. "Maybe I will. If Dana is helping the guys relax, they'd be even more relaxed with me there." "You're smart, Aaron. Can you think of any reason why I shouldn't go?" Aaron crossed his arms stubbornly. "I can't think of a single reason why you shouldn't," he said. "Have fun." He leaned back and took a drink from his beer while Maria walked away. "They're all the same," he muttered to the sea. "I don't need any of them. All I need is my car, a boat, and something to hunt." "You really told her your mind," said Stacy, stepping out from the shadows. "What are you doing on my boat, Stacy?" Aaron snapped. "We made sure you were safe on land. We didn't even tell the university what you did with Robert's plan because we didn't know what your role was. But sneaking onto a boat can get you jail time. Is that what Robert's turned you into? A criminal?" "Robert didn't do this to me, Aaron," Stacy said softly. "You did. I still love you so much. I'm trying hard for another chance, but you keep pushing me away. I can see now how much my betrayal hurt you, just like you can't see how much I still care about you. You can't see how much Dana cares either. Oh my God, Aaron, she was trying to get your attention. She didn't want to go to that party. She wanted you to tell her not to go. I'd bet you that she isn't there right now. She's probably down below crying. That little girl listens to you, Aaron. She's not like me. I think she'd make better choices. But if you gave me another chance, I promise I'd never make those choices again." Aaron stared at Stacy as if he didn't care about what she said. "Do you know what it's like for a woman in my field?" she asked. "I've been in school since I was 5. I know everyone starts then, but I'm 38 now and I just finished school 3 years ago. For the last 3 years, I've been doing research and working hard to reach my goal." "Stacy, everyone has goals," Aaron shot back. "The only thing different is what they're ready to give up to get them. You gave up me, our marriage, and our future for something that doesn't really matter." "Doesn't matter to you, Aaron," Stacy replied sharply. "For me and many others, it's a dream." Have you noticed that when we're on a campus, half the students call you Professor Anderson? Aaron nodded. I know it bothers you, but think about how it makes me feel. I see how hard you work. You're always off to some jungle or mountain or under the sea. Those are things you love. When we go to a lecture, you're bored, but it's what I dream of. I've earned my chance to be a professor, but people just see me as Professor Anderson's wife. I got tired of it after so many years. I decided that if I couldn't beat them, I may as well join them. The funny part is you accepted me. It was Robert I had to prove myself to. I wish you could see how good this could have been for us. I'd get the job as a professor here, and you and Robert could join the staff as archaeologists or whatever you like to call yourselves. Aaron sighed and frowned. But it all went wrong because Robert also wanted the professor job. I needed to win him over. So I tried to change his mind. You might not understand, but I didn't do it because I don't love you. I did it because I do love you. I wanted us to be equal just like you and Robert were. I think he knows now that you were more equal than he thought. So, Stacy, Aaron said, if this was true, why didn't you tell me what you wanted from the start? I could have talked to Robert. Maybe he would have agreed, because I wanted to do something on my own, she said, angry. What good is it if my husband has to let me in? If I knew one wrong choice could end our marriage, I wouldn't have done it. And still, you lie, Aaron said. What lie? Stacy asked. It was just a mistake. I can tell you why I did that if you want to know, she said. Aaron nodded. I did it because you don't really like that, she explained. Whenever we're intimate, if I try to do that, you pull me back up. After being married to you for so long, I've learned what you enjoy, Aaron. You like being close to me. You're probably the most loving person I know. You believe in two people becoming one. So I thought, if I did something you didn't want anyway, it wouldn't be so bad. Stacy, people say sometimes you give someone enough rope to hang themselves. I think you've gone too far now, Aaron replied. What do you mean? She asked. From the first day Maria came to me, I was upset about what you did. I didn't know what to do except be angry at Robert. Maria talked me into coming to see you after I calmed down a bit. She thought we should try to fix things first, then deal with him. She wanted to join our team for research. Robert had fired her, so she would have been your assistant or mine, probably yours since I don't really do research. He shrugged and smiled at her. Stacy looked shocked. She wanted you to talk to me? Stacy asked, and Aaron nodded. So we went to the villa, and before I could even knock, I saw you and Robert together on the couch in the living room. Since then, you've lied to me 3 times about what happened. You were with him right after I found out how hurt I was from your first betrayal. If you loved me as much as you say, how could you do that after hurting me so badly? And now you've made up another story about why you did it, saying I don't like it. But the truth is you were with him too, so do I not like that either? Stacy's expression fell. Maybe it's just time for us to move on, said Aaron. We can't go back. With everything you've done and all the lies, I could never trust you again. Let's just have a calm and friendly divorce before we lose any respect for each other. But she started. Save it, Stacy, Aaron said. There's no point in going over the same things again. Aaron checked the time. It was much later than he thought it would be. The talk with his ex-wife took longer than expected. He went to his quarters. The captain had given Aaron his own cabin and was staying with the crew. Aaron was the only one on the ship with a cabin to himself. The captain would be at the helm with some crew members until they reached the dive site. Then he would sleep until they were ready to go again. Aaron walked into the dim cabin and sat on the edge of his bed. The mattress felt strange, not as soft as it should be. He took off his pants, boots, and socks. Just as he was about to take off his shirt, he heard a sigh. He turned on the light and jumped back in surprise. "What the heck?" he shouted. Maria yawned and stretched her arms. "What's all the noise about?" she asked. "What are you doing in my bed?" he replied. "You told me to go join the others," she said, sounding upset. "I decided to have fun with all the guys on the ship, and you're the last one." She crossed her arms, but it didn't hide much. Aaron shook his head. She could tell he didn't believe her. "Okay, you're the first one," she said, trying to change her story. He shook his head again. "Okay, you're the only one," she said. "But that's my final offer." Aaron laughed and got into bed. He turned off the light and pulled the blanket over himself. "Aren't we going to do anything?" he heard her say. "No," he replied. "Why not?" Maria asked. "I want to." I do too, Rhea, Aaron said. But we need to take our time. There's no rush. I wouldn't want to mess up what could be a great friendship or more if we jump into things too quickly. Aaron, she said softly. Yes, Dr. Claridge, he answered lightly. Can you just hold me then? She asked. Aaron always woke up early. Unless he was drunk, he was up before the sun. The next morning when Steve came looking for him at 6:45 a.m., the sun was already up and half of the crew was eating breakfast. They had reached the dive spot more than an hour ago. Mike and Steve had finished their meals and had started searching the sea floor. Steve knocked softly on the door but got no answer. He pushed the door open and quickly closed it again. Dana walked down the hallway and asked him if he had seen Maria. He turned red and nodded. Why are you acting weird? Dana asked. Steve pointed at the door and rushed back to the monitor room. Sandra and Jordan came down the hall next and ran into Dana. Mike was just coming down as well, and he joined them. They all huddled together as Dana quietly opened the door and saw Maria and Aaron in bed together. They had gotten cozy during the night, and the blanket had slipped down. All the men reacted right away. Maria was curled up against Aaron with one of his arms around her. Quickly, Dana shut the door. "Oh my gosh," Mike exclaimed. "I've known her for 4 years, and I never noticed she looked like that." "Or that she was so pretty," added Jordan. "You just need the right guy to show it," joked Dana. Not long after, Aaron looked nervous, and Maria had a big smile as they peered over Mike's shoulder. "They may just be rocks," said Mike. "That little earthquake might have stirred things up. There's a lot of mud blocking our view. Plus, we are seeing it from an angle that makes it hard to tell." Everyone, including Stacy, shifted their heads between the curved lines on the radar screen and the EDVM. With those lines being so regular, there's a good chance they're not just natural things, Mike continued. Dana, Sandra, Steve, and Jordan all nodded. Maria looked at Aaron with a confused face and took his hand. Stacy pretended not to notice. "Does anyone really understand what he just said?" Aaron asked. "Not really," said Dana. "Some bits," said Steve. "Not a word," said Sandra. "I'm just a diver," said Jordan. "I'm still stuck wondering how Maria hid her looks from us all these years." "Fine. I'm going down there," said Aaron. "Aren't we supposed to send a robot camera down first?" Mike asked. "We don't know what's down there." "We'll find out as soon as I get down there," Aaron replied. "You coming, Jordan?" "Man, I'm already wet," Jordan said. "You're not the only one," Dana chimed in. Maria nudged her friend. Aaron and Jordan ran to the main deck to get their diving gear on. "I agree with Mike," said Maria. "The area could be dangerous. What if there are mines or sharks? We should send the robot camera down first. I'm supposed to be your partner, so I should have a say. I hired you, Jordan, so I can also fire you." Stacy gently pulled Maria aside. She looked at her and spoke softly. "This is the toughest part," she said. "It's not just about searching and hoping to find something. It's not the wait when there's nothing there. It's seeing him go do something you know might be dangerous." Maria looked at Stacy, curious, and nodded. "And it never gets easier," Stacy continued. "But remember a few things. First, look at him. He's excited like a kid at Christmas. This is what he does. All we can do is worry about him. He'll go no matter what. If you try to stop him, he might just stop letting you come along. Then you'll worry even more because you won't be with him. If you stop Jordan from going, Aaron will have to go alone, but he'll still go. Is that what you want?" Maria shook her head hard and tried not to cry. "At least this time I have you to worry with me," said Stacy. "Robert never worried about anything." He stayed on the boat and waited for Aaron to dive down and bring back the treasures. He never went underwater himself. He just sat back, watched, and collected the money. "Dr. Claridge, you'll have to get used to this. We might not be the brave ones, but watching someone you care about do something risky can hurt just as much. So we wait and hope they come back safe." Stacy noticed tears in the other woman's eyes, and a caring feeling arose in her. "It's nice to give him something that shows him what he's coming back to," she said with a smile. "But we haven't." Maria started. "You will," Stacy replied with a grin. "When you and Aaron finally get together, you'll see." Maria walked over to Aaron and kissed him. He was surprised, but soon relaxed and kissed her back. Everyone cheered as they saw the kiss. Can I check your camera feeds?" Mike asked. "Unless you're just going to film something else, then I can skip it." Aaron and Jordan swam down into the water and entered a bright new world. Usually the water here was clear, but after the recent earthquake and storms, the ground had stirred up a lot of dirt. It might take days for the water to clear up again. As they swam down, some curious fish and sea creatures noticed them. Luckily, they didn't see any sharks. It had been over 5 years since a shark attack happened here, but no one wanted to take that chance. As they neared the bottom, Aaron spotted some oddly shaped items first. Mike had said they could be rocks, but as he swam closer, he saw that some edges were sharp and some were round. It looked like a decoration. The sea currents had smoothed it out, but he could just make out what looked like a lion's head. He pointed it out to Jordan. Jordan picked up a few smaller items and piled them together so they could take them when they left. Aaron swam a bit further and nearly jumped in shock. What he thought was a weird shape on the sea floor turned out to be a log. He wondered what kind of wood it was and decided to take a closer look. To his surprise, it wasn't a log at all. It was part of a column. He realized he had found what might be the ruins of a large building. He pointed up and Jordan understood. They quickly collected as many smaller items as they could and started swimming back to the surface. They had to go slowly to avoid getting hurt from the change in pressure. Aaron really wanted to rush back to the surface to see what he had found. An hour later, Aaron changed and looked at the things he had brought up from the ocean floor. Maria and Stacy were very excited. They carefully cleaned some dirt off a few items and started to figure out what they were. These items looked like old cups and part of a jar, but they were so ancient that both Maria and Stacy had trouble placing them in a specific time period. "Okay, Captain, let's get out of here." "Shout it, Aaron, happily." "Aren't we going back for more items?" asked Maria. "Nope, there's just too much down there," said Aaron. "We will take what we have back to the dean and then get a bigger team to come back and explore the area properly. Don't worry. You'll have plenty of fun studying all this stuff for months, maybe even years. That column we found was huge. I don't think anyone else has found something this big before. I'm sure we'll win the challenge and you'll get the job as a professor." "I'll make sure of it," said Aaron. "Yay," said Maria, sounding a bit sad. "I guess you won." "No, Rhea, we won," he replied. "This is what we wanted to do. You and your friends will get all the credit. I'll just get to dive and find things. We all won." "I was talking about our bet," Maria said. "That seems to matter more than everything else now." Aaron looked at Maria, then at Stacy. She also looked upset. He thought to himself that it was hard to understand women. The captain used the radio to tell the university where they were. Once the university knew the location of their discovery, they would contact the Greek government to get permission to dive and take items. No other team had found anything yet, so he urged them to hurry and bring samples of what they discovered. Soon, the boat was on its way home. Almost 2 hours into the trip, trouble appeared. A small, fast boat cut in front of them. 3 men with guns fired shots into the air and shouted through a loudspeaker for the ship to stop so they could inspect it. The captain looked at Aaron. 2 more fast boats were behind them, and one had a rocket launcher. As Aaron watched, the boats kept their positions, and the men pointed their weapons at the ship. "Captain, do we have any weapons on board?" Aaron asked. "No, sir," said the captain. "Why would we need weapons? We usually fish and sometimes go diving like you folks. We've never had anything valuable that needed protection." Aaron felt Maria grab his hand on one side and stasis on the other. He had heard stories about modern pirates, but he never thought they would come so close to a country's borders. "Captain, call for help before they come on board," said Aaron. "It might not arrive in time, but at least we'd know help is on the way. Let's just hope they take what they want and leave. I hope they only want money and things." The captain slowly made his way to the bridge. When he got there, he did what Aaron asked. He came back to Aaron a few minutes later. By then, a bigger boat, almost the same size as theirs, was coming closer. The smaller boats were just for scouting. As the big boat got nearer, the men in the smaller boats tied them up one by one. The men on the smaller boats kept their weapons pointed at the ship. Then they came aboard. They moved fast and organized. They gathered everyone on the ship into one spot. The men looked tough, but were not dirty. They didn't talk. Instead, they pointed and used hand signals. After Aaron and his crew were together, 2 men came from the big boat. "Damn pirates," the captain growled. "We're not pirates," said the leader of the men. "We're privateers." "What's the difference?" asked Aaron. "If we were pirates," the man replied, "we would hurt you and take everything. We would keep whatever was left for ransom. Those two," he pointed at Stacy and Maria, "would already be in danger. The other two women would be treated badly by my crew." He paused and looked at Aaron. "I don't need to say it." He continued, looking straight at Aaron. "We'd have to kill you to do that. I can see from your face that a few of us would be harmed, even though you are outnumbered and unarmed." Aaron nodded. "Anyway, we aren't pirates. Our goals and ways are different. We're like mercenaries. We work for a specific client to do a certain job. We're professionals and don't hurt anyone unless we have to. In a different situation, we could have been friends." "I don't think so," Aaron replied. "Never say never," said the leader. "The world is strange, and anything can happen." He looked at Aaron and asked, "What would you do to protect that one?" He pointed at Maria. "If she was sick or hurt and you needed money for food or medicine, what if you had kids and couldn't find a job? What would you do in this tough economy for those you care about?" Aaron nodded, even though he didn't want to. "Ah, a reasonable man," said the leader, "and a smart one, too. Like I said, in another life we could have been friends. I'm sorry to say that my current client isn't like that man." Aaron watched as his oldest and once best friends stepped onto the ship. Aaron felt tense as he saw Robert arrive. "Damn it," Robert said. He glanced at the table where the small items they had found sat. "No one else has found anything. I have spies watching all 4 other teams plus the one I placed with you. I knew you would find something here, even if people said this place was empty. I can't believe I fired her." He pointed at Maria. "She must be smart and pretty." He walked across the deck and stood in front of Maria, who was hiding behind Aaron. He reached out and touched Maria's face, and she pulled away. In a flash, Aaron hit Robert with a punch. Several men pointed their weapons at him, but their leader told them to stop with a wave. "If you touch her again, I'll hit you even harder, you jerk," Aaron said. "I don't want to hurt her old friend. I want to take good care of her, you see?" Robert said. Then he walked over and patted Stacy on the back. "Hey, Stacy," he said. Stacy moved his hand away. "Hello, idiot," she said sharply. "Yep, I guessed right," Robert said. He looked at the leader of the mercenaries. "I told you, even though he's married to the tall one, he loves the little one. She's the one you'll take. I'll stay on the ship with my other friends." "What friends?" Aaron asked, his anger rising. "You have no friends on this ship." "Oh, come on, Aaron. We're all on the same team. You and I have moved past what happened at the gala. We're back together like one big, happy family." "That's what you'll tell the committee at the university. We'll go back and share the credit for whatever you found, and I'll get my job back, at least for a time. Stacy, I'll even give you a position as my assistant and help you get your own job later. Of course, I'll be gone before then, so you can have mine. After I know you'll follow the plan, Aaron, I want your promise that you won't tell anyone about our deal. I've known you for years, Aaron. You care about honor. I know if you promise, you won't break it. As soon as I have your word and I'm secure in my job, I'll let her go. Then you two can leave together. I hate to do this, and for me, it's not just about the job anymore. What I really need is the money." Aaron just looked at him oddly. "Yes, old friend," Robert said. "I'm about to run out of money." "How?" Aaron asked. "We've made a lot of money in the last few years." "Aaron, you and Stacy always lived sensibly," Robert replied. "But I'm the one everyone knows. I have to live a life that comes with my fame. There were always trips, houses, women, and parties. From what you found here, I bet there are a lot more things back at the site. You rushed back to get credit, contact the museum, and sort out all the boring legal stuff, didn't you?" Aaron nodded. "This time, we're going to do things differently. We'll get all the needed permits and such, but we'll only hand in the big items. Anything small enough to sneak out without the officials noticing or anything they haven't seen will go into what we're calling the Secure Roberts Future Fund. I'm tired of playing by the rules. I need a big pile of cash to retire, and if you tell anyone about this, I'll make sure one of my men does something very bad to Dr. Claridge," he said with a smile. "Did you really think I'd trust you, Aaron?" He sneered. "Oh, I trust you, but I need some guarantees, too. Once I get my money, I'll vanish and you can have your girlfriend back. I had to change my plans a bit. I was going to use Stacy. I let her get close to me to build trust, but once you saw us, I knew she wouldn't help me anymore. There was never a chance you'd take her back. You cared too much about honesty and promises. She was no good to me once you found out. Now this new girl holds the key to both your heart and my future, Robert said. I'd love to try her out, too, he added. But if I did, we'd just be starting over, or would we? Robert reached towards Maria, but Aaron moved quickly. He punched Robert hard in the head, making him fall to the deck with his face swelling and bleeding. This time none of the men reacted. They didn't respect Robert, even though he was paying them. You'd better save your strength, old friend. Robert laughed, blood on his lips. If you want to keep her safe, you're going to be my little helper for the next few weeks. If you refuse to do what I say, you won't like how she is when you get her back. Aaron just sat there smiling. Take her, he told the leader of the men. But then Robert made a big mistake. Again he reached for Maria. Like the other men, he couldn't look away. I'd love to be that necklace, Robert said. It must be the warmest spot on earth. Did you give that to her, Aaron? It's nice. At that moment, the leader of the mercenaries looked closely at the necklace. Where did you get that necklace? He asked Maria unexpectedly. A friend of mine, Elena Reinhardt, gave it to me, Maria replied. The man's expression changed quickly. Let's go, he told his men. He nodded at Aaron. Wait, you fool, yelled Robert. You're supposed to take her with you. Robert rushed after the man and grabbed his shoulder. I'm the one paying you, remember? We can live on your deposit for a while, the man said with a sneer. There are things more important than money, like family. I'll pay you double, Robert said. Elena Elizabetha is my cousin, the man replied, still sneering. In this area, crossing her or her friends can be dangerous. Besides, you have no honor. You openly talked about stealing from my country for your own gain. Take me with you then, Robert shouted as the man started to leave. I can't guarantee your safety on my boats, the man said. My men don't like you. Wait, said Aaron. Here's my number at the university. If you really need honest work to support your families, I have an idea. Call Elena and we can sort things out. The man nodded and walked away. Aaron turned to Robert and smiled like a shark seeing a smaller fish. Robert stumbled back to the rail, fear on his face. But before Aaron could reach Robert, Maria stepped in between them. Aaron, he's not worth it, she said. If you hurt him too badly, you could go to jail. I'm not going to hurt him, Aaron replied. I just want him off my boat. I'm going to throw him overboard. But Aaron, the pirates or whoever they were are gone, said Stacy. He's a famous historian, Aaron snapped. He can hitch a ride. Let me deal with him, Maria said. We'll lock him in one of the storage rooms until the police come and then we'll hand him over. We can't do that, said Aaron. If we do, we'll have to explain who we hired. Those men seemed honorable, pushed into this by pride and circumstance. Maria looked at Robert. He was cowering by the rail. She kneed him hard in the groin. That's for Stacy, she said. Then she slapped him across the face. That's for me. We'll hand him over to Elena, Aaron said. I'm sure she'll know what to do with him. For me, the hardest part will be telling his mother what a jerk he is. 6 weeks later, the site exploration was almost done. After finding all the visible artifacts, the team gently sifted through the ground and found more. Then they discovered the structure of a small building. Aaron's team shared the profits for the items with the university, which then gave them to the Greek government. Museums all around the world were asking to display the new artifacts. Scholars and researchers from many places were coming to see them. Stacy was helping Maria organize all the items. They worked with some historians from the university and a few museums to set up the displays. Stacy and Aaron had agreed to a split without arguing over anything. Stacy told him that if he ever wanted to get back together, she would be open to it. The old soldiers were providing security for the site, so most people were pleased. Robert had just been let go. But the dean sent a message to every major museum and university worldwide about Robert's actions. He also shared the story with big news companies. Robert had to leave the country before the Greek police found him. Even with his PhD, he would never work in his field again. So, Professor Claridge, Stacy said, thank you for hiring me to help with the project. What will you do now? Do you need a good assistant? Not one who would try to take my fiancé from me all the time, Maria shot back. And you know you do that because you still care for him. Very much, Stacy replied. I guess I need to find a job then. I might go back to the U.S., even though I love it here. Then why don't you stay, Stacy? Maria asked. I would love to have a friend here. even if I have to keep an eye on you and keep you away from Aaron. How would I live? Stacy said. Just on my good looks, I won't do that again. Would you think about a job as a professor at a certain university? Maria asked. But that's your job and your dream, Stacy said. My old dream, Maria explained. I have a new one. Remember when you told me how hard it is to watch him go off and do his things? Stacy nodded. You'll have to get used to it. I always wanted to teach about what he finds, give talks for groups who visit and write papers about them. You see, Stacy, that's where we are different, Maria said. And that's why you're going to be the professor. Stacy stared at Maria in surprise. You're going to let me have the job of a lifetime, she asked. Maria smiled and nodded. What will you do? Just stay at home and raise his kids? Stacy asked. Maybe in a few years, Maria replied. But for now I'm taking diving lessons and climbing lessons. I don't want to sit and wait for him. I don't want to talk about or teach about Aaron finding history. Aaron will never stop racing through the ruins, and I don't want to just wait and worry. I want to be there with him every time he goes out.